10 minutes ago, Winston.
Did you know Jack? He was an engineer too back.
Okay, Mr. Sandlin, I believe we're live.
Turn these pages like this.
Huh?
You have to turn these
Are we
pages
live? We're
like
live,
this.
okay.
Yes.
We're actually recording. This is going to go
Yes.
on LightTube?
It's on LightTube now.
We're on now.
All right, we're on. Well, hey, welcome to the special call meeting, the May 31st meeting of the Planning Commission, where our mission tonight is to look through the current draft of the comprehensive plan. There are comments. What you have on your desk here is red line version from the steering committee that spent some time looking at it. I think they had 2 or 3 full meetings on it. And then we've received 85 pages of public comments too that were all emailed out to everybody if you had a chance to look at those. So that's our mission tonight, is to go through this. Now, Mary, what do you recommend for a format for this tonight?
Go ahead and open the meeting, and then we'll establish a quorum, and then I'll brief you, I think, on kind of how we should proceed.
Okay, well, we do have a quorum,
Okay.
so we will jump on in.
Okay, thank you again, Mary Samaniego, Senior Planner for the City of Tullahoma. So the purpose of tonight's special call meeting, as well as tomorrow's special call meeting, is for the Planning Commission to review the official draft of the comprehensive plan. I have provided you with the draft of the plan some time ago, at least over a month ago, and during the entire month of April, we solicited comments from the public through the Think Tullahoma 2040 website. We received about 88 or 89 pages of comments from the public. I provided those to you as well over a week ago for you to review before tonight's meetings. So I will take the format the way that I've run it through the steering committee. The steering committee, as Mr. Sandlin stated, met for overall about 7 or 8 hours over the last 3-week period, and went page by page through the plan to make edits. Those edits I have brought in a red line version for you tonight, and they're before you on your desks. As well as there were some public comments about grammatical errors and spelling errors that I've also went ahead and taken the liberty to correct in the draft red line before you. So the process is that we will, you will review we'll go through the plan page by page. I'll ask you if you have any of your own possible comments, concerns, edits based on your own ideas or concerns or thoughts, as well as things that you want to incorporate that you gleaned from the public's comments. And then we'll proceed. Hopefully, if we get everything accomplished by tomorrow at 8:30, then we'll probably the June 20th Planning Commission meeting for the regular meeting. We already have 9 agenda items. A comprehensive plan by state statute requires a 30-day public advertisement. So we'll probably hold another special call meeting just for the adoption of the plan. During that adoption hearing, it will be a public hearing. The public will have the right to speak on the plan, and then you can either vote for it as edited. You can make edits during that meeting, or you can continue that meeting based on public comments. If some of the public brought up some new questions, concerns, ideas that hadn't been contemplated, you can also continue the adoption hearing for further revision. One thing, just so it's clear to the public and clear to you what my role in this is that I am your professional planner. It is not my job to guide any sort of policy decisions whatsoever. My job is to explain to you in the planner language that the plan is written in, kind of what the reality of it means, like how it would be implemented and what the ramifications for the policy decisions could be, either one way or the other. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Nina Abbott, your secretary, is whisking Chick-fil-A here momentarily, so we'll be eating too, so that's something to
Well, quick question. Have
keep you going.
Any of the public comments been incorporated into this draft? Into this
Yes,
red line?
there were some, yes, the
Because there were a lot
steering,
of typos and things.
yes, there were typos and grammatical errors. I corrected that myself. as far as policy direction from the public, this entire packet was given to all the steering committee members, and as they worked through the edits of the plan, they took those public comments under consideration,
Okay,
just as we will tonight.
okay. Yes, Dave?
Is this door, is it open for a reason?
No, you can close it. I'm so sorry. I had it open because I was in the kitchen.
I want somebody sneaking up on
Thank you. It's your escape route.
I would have came in that way if I knew it.
Okay, so let's get started. And if you want, Mr. Sandlin, if you want to take a different approach, just feel free to
No,
stop me.
this will work,
This
page by
is
page.
semi-formal. Again, it's more like a work session, but I felt it appropriate, Mr. Brooks and I felt it appropriate to televise it and ask the public to attend if they wanted to, just for full transparency of the discussion. Are there any comments and/or corrections for the background data section? This is the plan from page 1 through page, let me see, page about 45. Again, this is just a lot of the data. The data has been fact-checked by myself and Mr. Brooks extensively to confirm accuracy. So is any questions on the comments on the background data?
I recall many comments from the general public comments, just typos and ways of saying things, but have those all been captured?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I went line by line through all the public comments and tried to capture all of the, like I said, grammatical typos, wrong wording, that kind of thing. And those have already been incorporated into the draft plan.
Any comments from the commission? Everything caught all the way through the background through page 46?
I believe so.
Through the real heart of the plan,
Okay, 41.
or through the plan, yeah.
Okay.
No, I think we're good.
Similarly, were there any questions, concerns, comments on all the appendices? The appendices include the different studies that were done, the public opinion survey results. Those are pulled right from the database that we had for the public opinion surveys. The economic baseline analysis performed by Randy Gross, the housing market analysis data, again, by the consultants, event venue marketing analysis, and economic development strategies. That is all kind of the data that was done through those studies by the economist and Phil Walker and the land use planner to create the components of the policy direction found in the formal plan.
Any comments from the commission on the appendices?
I would make one comment, and that is, as I started reading through the plan, I began getting references back to the appendices. I read further back, reading, and sending me back to the appendices. I found it was much helpful to go ahead and read the appendices first, and then read the plan. That way I knew the building blocks for the plan. So that was helpful for me in understanding the plan better.
Yeah, and I think that the format, I've read many a comprehensive plan in my day. Sometimes the appendices are kind of separate documents that are just referred to, but I think it's beneficial in a town as small as Tullahoma to go ahead and include all the background data in the information in the plan itself, as opposed to some sort of separate supplemental document. So it's clear for future planning commission members and aldermen and the public, just ease of use. There's one document for reference that has all of the background data, all the building blocks, like the mayor said, and then the policy direction.
Right. No, I mean, there's a lot of background. I mean, almost half of the document is appendices in terms of volume, but detail analysis. Any comments on the appendices? I didn't see anything that
Okay.
jumped out.
All right, we'll get started with
Get to the heart of it.
the meat
Yeah.
of it, yeah. All right, and again, any members, just feel free to jump in whenever you had a comment. Okay, page 1 of the plan. Page 41, let me go there. Hold on. Escape. Make sure that the public can follow along here. Okay, any questions, concerns, comments on page 41 that you had? This is just laying out the place types kind of overview. Again, place types, the current land use plan that we have and the map that we have is called a land use plan, which basically just establishes land use categories which detail the types of uses and kind of density as far as in different sectors of the city. A place types map goes further, it establishes land use densities, but it also goes into some design direction as well. And so that's the difference between a place types map and a land use map in general terms. Okay, seeing none, move on. So these are the 5 main place types that you have. Again, what's before you on the screen is the edited version from the steering committee. There is the natural place types, which are irregularly shaped, linear and curvilinear forms following natural contours of streams. These are typical outdoor passive recreation areas and greenways. Each one of these 5 place types will go into much more detail in further pages of the plans, as you know, since you've reviewed it. There was one edit with the rural place type, but I will get to that when we get to that subcategory. So do you have any comments on page 42?
You're going to get to the change in acreage there?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to it then.
Okay, so this is the place types map. I have provided for you on the dais up there. You might have to share. I put 3 large 24 by 36 versions of the place type map. With the place types map, one thing to consider is that there are different scenarios for further development for the city. Either say there is a single-family neighborhood. Let me try to find an example here. Hold on. So over West Carroll, South Jackson area. If you look at the screen, there are, this area is generally commercial along Carroll Street. And then when you go down South Washington and Anderson, it's kind of a mix of commercial and industrial uses, but there are there's 1 or 2 large pockets of established neighborhoods where there's existing block of houses. So with the place types map, a decision the Planning Commission and the Steering Committee and the board have to make is that, do you want to make those established uses conforming by putting them in a place type for which they would be permissible? Or do we want to have broader strokes with the place type categories and in effect make them non-conforming? With your current land use plan and your zoning map, I've noticed that there are large areas of the city that have become non-conforming with those 2 documents. And so, as an example, let me try to give you an example of what I'm talking about that you'll be familiar with. On South Washington, between Warren and Lauderdale, as an example, on the current land use map and the current zoning map, all those houses on both sides of the street are commercial. So what has happened is that all those houses have become non-conforming. So if any of those residential property owners come in to add on to their house, if they want to demolish that house and build a new one, they are not able to, because they have been determined to be non-conforming. At some point, apparently, the thought is that there would be large commercial development that would expand into these areas. However, in my professional opinion, I've seen that it's very difficult, given the Tullahoma market, for a developer to come in and buy out an entire block of houses to do a commercial development. To do a sizable development on a quarter acre, they would have to buy out 5 houses with that expense and then further build their product. And Washington and Warren and Lauderdale, well, not Lauderdale, but Washington and Warren are also local residential streets that aren't really meant to carry that sort of traffic capacity. So the broader question getting back to the point, the broader question with the place types map, I've suggested several changes to the map to, in effect, make more uses conforming. And then when there are undeveloped areas that are surrounded by a similar place type, I gave it that same place type. As an example, this area over here on Anderson and Mitchell, that's clearly an industrial area. There's some vacant properties within that immediate area that I went ahead and has the industrial place type. However, you'll see on the place types map that there is an isolated subdivision that is on, say, East Moore Street. If you look at the map, you can follow my mouse. There's a neighborhood here, Henderson Circle, and then off of General Street by Cornish. Here's a little subdivision here. We went ahead and made that a single-family residential place types to make all those houses conforming, as opposed to just putting a large swath of commercial down Carroll.
Can you say that again, slower?
So the thought is that, so the planning commission, I guess, in general, needs to decide if you want to make more properties conforming and compliant, so the existing property owners can further develop their property. Because right now, the direction the plan and the zoning goes, a lot of properties have become non-conforming in speculation that they would be developed for a different use.
But,
So there are blocks of neighborhoods or blocks of houses that are either an industrial or commercial zoning district. So all those houses have become non-conforming. The people, I'm just being frank with you, the people come in and try to add on to the house or want to demolish it and build a nicer, newer house, and they can't because that land has been placed kind of in a holding pattern for some potential future industrial or commercial use. What we've seen is that large industrial and commercial uses typically need larger acreage and they want vacant sites. There's an added expense to buy out. If you want an acre site for industrial land, but you have 10 houses, or say 5 houses on an acre, you would have to buy all 5 of those houses out, demolish them, and then put your industrial use. And our market, we're just not in that market. Where a developer would do that.
Yeah,
They would look for a vacant piece of property.
I would absolutely say let's make them conform. That's one of the calls that I get frequently is, hey, I bought this and it changed. And
Right.
now I'm stuck.
Now, there is one thing to consider that's kind of an exception to it in general. There are some instances where an entire block is already been developed industrial and there's one last house that's sitting there. In those instances, I would say it probably would be appropriate to go and make that non-conforming. Because, like I said, the overwhelming development pattern in that immediate area is, say, industrial, and we have like 1 or 2 older properties that would be appropriate to convert over time. Because if you make everything conforming, it's hard to implement the new plan. Because things are supposed to redevelop over time, and as they redevelop over time, they go into the new uses you're projecting.
Do we have a case like that, where there's just one residential property?
Yes,
Is that hypothetical, or is that real?
let me see. Coming off the top of my mind, there's one that is it is
That one on
here
Moore
somewhere.
Ridge, what you said.
It's over like on Washington, hold on. Carroll, Washington. It's a condemned property. It's a, it was condemned because it was a drug house. I'll say it like that, right here. It's on Warren and Polk. This entire block has gone commercial or industrial. A lot of these houses have already been demolished or they're being used for for commercial activity. And then there's one house here on Warren and Polk. So it's, do you see it on the maps?
Hey, Mary, this gets me to more like a fundamental question here.
Yeah.
You know, how, by approving this place types map, how that's going to drive our zoning?
Correct.
It sounds like there's lots of overlap that and you'd have to look block by block.
Right, which Mr. Brooks and I have done. We've literally gone block by block. We've looked, our GIS system, which is our Geographic Information System mapping, we have a layer that has existing uses from the property appraiser, so we know what's out there. Then we have the zoning map, and then we have the land use map, and then we have the place types map. And so we went block by block, kind of looking what was out there. Should it be conforming, non-conforming? What's the place type? How much land do we need in each place type category? So we have gone through that. I'm not saying there won't be mistakes. And also remember that once the plan is adopted and the place type map is adopted, it can always be amended. If there's a scenario where a block or several houses, or there's a property that we had as residential, but it's actually a little cluster of commercial, like 2 commercial buildings that we want to make conforming, we can always go back and amend the plan. The place types map.
Well, I guess that's a general comment. I mean, this is a plan. We have a zoning ordinance that's city law. We still have to go through
Yes.
and modify that step by step. So this is,
But the thought
Just a
is
lot of
that
information.
once the place type map is adopted, then the city will go through the exercise of creating the new zoning districts to implement the new place. So there'll be a zoning district for each place type, subcategory, and then we'll adopt a new zoning map to implement the place type map. So hopefully everything would match, therefore reducing the number of rezonings we have. So we'll go ahead and rezone the city to implement the plan. Mayor?
Mayor, I'll have one very general comment about place types. And that is, in my opinion, I would like to see us do what we can to protect the property values of existing homeowners. That is a general policy that will be my guiding light for adopting this.
Okay. For all property owners or residential property owners?
Well, my thought was for residential property
Okay.
owners particularly.
Okay.
yeah, that's an interesting comment, though, Mayor. I mean, if something going from residential to commercial would probably go up in value.
That's why I said property values. That's to protect their property values.
I would take that a step further, and not just the value, but their interest. Maybe going from residential to commercial might up their property value, but I talked to somebody the other day where she said, this is my forever home that I want to hand down to my son, but I can't because it's been zoned commercial, and now I can't do anything with it. And
Right.
so, and that's what I think, I want to make sure that's what you are saying is, kind of in summary there, is fixing some of those problems
Correct.
where we can.
Correct.
And bringing those back to residential, and in the
Where
the
appropriate.
extreme case where
Yeah.
appropriate is to make something non-conforming, but only if it's.
Right. As an example, here's another example. There is a single-family house that's on North Jackson across from the mall. It's zoned commercial. Literally everything else on North Jackson, up and down the entire corridor, probably for a mile on each side, is commercial. There's one house left. it'd be appropriate to go ahead and leave that house in a commercial land use or place type, not just isolated in a little dot of single family. Because the thought is that, again, the reality of non-conforming uses are always established with zoning. Those uses are meant to go away over time. So as the property deteriorates, as it changes hands, the house is demolished, or the structure is retained with a new use in that place. Again, that's the reality of how you can implement a new plan. Things have to kind of change character over time. Okay, yeah, well, go ahead, we can eat.
Does everybody want to eat?
We ordered a Chick-fil-A to eat as we work through this, and sweet tea. I did an educated guess that sweet tea would be the appropriate beverage,
We are in the south.
because we're in the south, right, see? I'm learning stuff. Okay, let's go to page 40. Okay, so that's generally the place type maps. We can whittle down further in the place types map once we start discussing the categories. Let's move to page 44. And again, if I'm going too fast or too slow, just let me know. Page 44, this is just a discussion of the natural areas. Basically, this is just, oh, thank you, Winston. This is just establishing the place type. It's kind of like an overlay place type of natural areas, which is your floodplain and your wetlands. Both the floodplains and the wetlands are heavily regulated by the federal and state governments, FEMA, and we're an MS4 community for stormwater, so all those kind of areas are already heavily regulated. However, it's a floating district because we still have to have a place type for a land use designation under it for, there is still development potentials within these natural areas, again, just how they're fulfilled environmentally are regulated. So any questions on page 44?
I'm good for now.
No. Okay. 45 is just some pictures that go along with the place types, the natural areas place types.
What page are we on right now?
We are moving on to page 46, sir.
Okay, natural areas. Rural
Yes.
areas.
So you're gonna touch on the.
Rural areas, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the rural areas are the potential place type for areas in the urban growth boundary. Thank you. I don't- yeah. Thank you, Winston. Okay, so, and forgive me, the public, but we have to eat and drink because this is a 4-hour meeting. In the urban growth boundary areas of Coffee County and Franklin County, we don't have any planning or zoning authority in those areas by state statute. However, this place type is for when these properties are annexed, what is the appropriate place type it should become once annexed. Are you understanding me? So I have 20 acres and I want to annex the property. Once it's annexed, it would go into the rural place type. Once it's part of the city's jurisdiction, then it gets absorbed into our plan. One of the broader things to think about as we review this plan is how much growth does the city want? I will say, from the public's perspective, we did hear a lot of comments, and you can read through it in the documents and the survey, that there was concern about too much growth happening in the city. A lot of people use the kind of terminology they want to maintain the small town feel. We don't want to become another Murfreesboro. There was a lot of kind of comments on that. So one of the broader things to think about, and that the consultants thought about, was how much growth does the city want? I think from hearing those types of comments and not really hearing a lot of comments that was strongly pro-growth as far as much development as we can handle, and we'll build the infrastructure to serve it. The consultants created this place type that if a property were to annex into the city in the rural areas, that the minimum lot size would be 3-acre minimum lot size. Right now, typically, if a property were to annex into the city in the urban, from the urban growth boundary, they would become a low-density residential land use category, and then an R1 zoning district, which is the 12,000 square foot minimum lot size. The main catalyst for developing, for annexing property into the city is so you can get the added density because of the presence of sewer. So if I owned 5 acres in the Coffee County UGB out on Avoca Road. Right now, to develop a subdivision, I have to have a septic system for each lot, and the minimum lot size is a little less than an acre. However, with that 5 acres, if I annex and run sewer to the property, I can get almost 4 dwelling units per acre. So instead of 5 lots, I can get 20. So that's kind of the rationale that developers have. That's why they want to annex, to get that sewer service so they can get more dwelling units. If the minimum lot size in the UGBs is 3 acres, that kills that incentive. It's a disincentive. So with the 3-acre minimum lot size in the UGB, nobody will be annexing anymore. So we won't see any further growth outward. Now, that would put additional pressure inward. So if you want to develop in the city, you have to start, basically, there's no more running utilities out into the UGB. Everything would have to happen kind of within the existing jurisdictional boundaries more intensely. We had a couple of hours of discussion on this topic at the steering committee. The thought is that that was perhaps too aggressive, that Tullahoma isn't experiencing that much growth, where growth is kind of rapidly out of control, where we have to put a strong boundary on the jurisdictional boundaries to kind of stop growth from further spreading out, and that there was concern about, there was kind of a lot of property investment in that area where people are holding properties with the future intent of developing, typically at the 1/4 acre minimum lot size. They always thought they could annex, and at the time that they wanted to annex and get on sewer and develop a subdivision. So there would be a certain amount of decreasing those, the property values of those areas. And so the thought is that the city, instead of just doing one or the other, instead of just focusing all growth on inside the existing city limits, to allow different scenarios for future expansion as well as internal growth. So that's generally kind of where the steering committee came from, that they didn't want to miss on the opportunity if some developer wanted to buy a large farm out in the UGB and do a mixed-use project, or a 1/4 acre 12,000 square foot minimum lot size subdivision. We wouldn't want that to be prohibited.
Okay.
So that's why the minimum lot size increased from 3 acres per lot to back to the 12,000 square feet, which again is what the standard is for the existing R1 zoning district. Mayor, you had a question?
Mary, I have a question about how we went from 1 house per 3 acres to 4 houses per acre. That just seemed, from now sitting in all these discussions with the steering committee, I never saw the rationale for such a drastic change. I thought the steering committee would come to a more of a compromised position on that, instead of going from 1 house per 3 acres to 4 houses per 1 acre. That's a 12-to-1 ratio. I thought they might go to 1 house per acre lot size instead. I'd really like to see the character of this urban growth boundary retain some of that rural character and get that minimum lot size up to more like an acre, as opposed to 3 acres. and versus what's now being proposed as one house per four houses per acre essentially. It's just my thought on developing this rural UTB.
I actually really like the idea of discouraging sprawl. And that seems like a good way to do it. However, I think to the mayor's point, existing structures and stuff like that, you know, people that are already living there that may want to be annexed in, an exemption there maybe. But as far as like encouraging inward growth and discouraging sprawl, so we don't end up with these little subdivisions out here in the middle of nowhere that are hard to maintain. We want the community to be walkable. We want it to be, we want everything like that, and that gets expensive for the city.
Right. I mean, one of the, and again, I'm not here to, I'm just telling you the reality of it. If a developer comes in and wants to develop a piece of property, that developer has to run the utilities to the site. So it's highly unlikely that somebody would, not impossible, but unlikely somebody would develop a property kind of in the middle of the Coffee County UGB, because they would have to run the utility, water sewer lines, 2 miles just to get out there, and then all the individual taps. So typically, it's cost prohibitive to, usually when you develop in UGB areas, it's like right up against the border, and they kind of follow each other. The developers, the next guy spreads the lines further out. Then once the lines are closer, they get closer and closer, and then that person hits. In general.
I agree with that, but that's
then,
not what's happening here.
But then on the second round, the second tier of cost to be aware of is that, the developer pays for everything, so there's no cost to the city, but you have to remember that there's maintenance costs. This developer pays for the sewer extension and the water extension through TUA, but then you have to think about, and they pay for the new roads, so they build the infrastructure, but then everything is dedicated to the city, so that's that much more sidewalks that the Public Works Department would have to maintain, that's that much more roads the Public Works have to maintain. That's, another garbage truck, that the trash service at Public Works.
Schools.
Fire department, that's further distance for the fire department. So it makes sense for you to think about the maintenance costs, whereas if more intensive development happened within the city's existing grid system, there's just more houses on East Deckard. Instead of 5 houses on the block, there's 10. Well, they're already plowing East Deckard anyway, and the sidewalk distance hasn't changed.
I mean, I think maintenance needs to be a strong case, because I don't think, our current infrastructure we have now with schools, I've been watching the public meetings with the garbage trucks and the paving and things like that. It's like, I'm almost in the impression that we can't afford what we have now. Why put more?
I would think too, thinking about the maintenance cost, if you can fit, say you've got an area and the developer does decide, hey, we're gonna go ahead and build this, and they run that sewage out, we run the road, we run the sidewalk, and say they can only fit 4 instead of 15 houses. Well, the city's now gotta maintain that off of the revenue from 4 houses versus 15 houses.
Correct.
So I think that there's things to consider in that as well. If somebody wants to build here, they're gonna do it. They want to annex, they're gonna do it. I would rather pay for it, have the money to pay for it. That cost doesn't decrease for us just because there's only 4 houses instead of 20 houses. I agree with not wanting to turn into Murfreesboro. I think part of Murfreesboro could happen quickly and poor planning. We're planning, so hopefully that fixes some of this. But I also look at it from I know some people don't like this, from a revenue standpoint. There's only a couple of ways for the city to grow revenues, and that's by raising property taxes, which nobody wants. Cost of everything's going up, from employees to equipment to everything. And so we need to raise property taxes. We increase our tax base, or we rely solely on expanded sales tax, which, you know, your ad valorem taxes should be what you're basing your services off of, not the fluctuations in your retail taxes. I don't like the 12,000 minimum lot size, and I think we talked about that when you first came on. I would like to see maybe an R1A with the 10,005 and then an R1B with the 12,000. Because there are complications when it comes to, for the builders, it's all about making money. And for us, it's about, can we maintain the services, and the more we stack. So, I mean, I would even like to see it, some mix 10-5 and some 12. If somebody doesn't want to live in a place that's only 10,500 square foot minimum lot, then don't buy the house. And don't build a house there, right? You want to live somewhere that's 12,000 square foot, build a house somewhere that's 12,000 square foot. I am pro controlled, smart growth. And I think that we have, it's the only way we're going to pay for these garbage trucks and these street cleaners. And
More,
the alternative is raising your taxes. So let's either expand the property base or let's raise your taxes. One of the two's got to happen.
One thing I will bring up, just for your information, also think about this discussion in the context of the other place types that we haven't gotten to yet, but you've all reviewed the plan. There's considerable increase in intensity throughout the other place types within the city. So there's lots of areas large areas of the city that have been opened up that can get up to 15 or 20 units per acre, where right now they're at, 10. So we're trying to create much more incentives for, we've designated large vacant pieces of property already in the city for much higher densities. But again, it could be, I think one of the things that the steering committee kind of fell back on with just kind of leaving the urban growth boundary at the density it currently is with kind of the R1 district is you would just let the market kind of decide.
I think, better ways or more return on investment ways for the city would be, I think, to encourage more like mixed use and stuff that actually is is taking in both sales tax and property tax, as well as like residentials living there. Mary, you may have some professional opinion on what it costs for annex and to go out versus to encourage, like, it's my understanding that single family dwellings, out of town are actually costing the city money, or a city money, I should say, not specifically Tullahoma. Whereas if, large, or not large, but some mixed-use developments where you have people living and working and dining and playing and working in the same area, which is actually a tax benefit for the city.
That is correct. Yes. Typically it costs more because, as I just said, as you're developing out, your infrastructure is spreading out more, as opposed to, just think of it like your development's spreading in a flat sense as opposed to growing up, meaning like more intensive where your infrastructure already is. Typically, it's less expensive for developers to develop on the existing infrastructure network as well. They don't have to run the sewer line out there and then do all the taps. The sewer lines are already right in front of them on the existing Short Springs Road is right there. But again, there's different markets. Some people want to live in a subdivision that's on the outskirts of town.
the 12,000 square feet, that's current R1, that's in our zoning
That's how
ordinance,
it is
right?
now. That's all it usually is now, basically.
That's what it is now, and this would just be anything that were annexed, because they would have to be on sewer to be that small. I'm thinking, I'm looking at the current city map. Hunter's Ridge went in 20, 25 years ago, but those are probably half-acre lots. But, they definitely reached out, built the subdivision, brought it into the sewer. And we get a lot of great property tax revenue from that development.
Yeah, the only reason why, again, everything I'm saying is just my professional opinion. The only reason why you would annex for lots, like acre lots or larger, is if you couldn't get, there was a problem with your soils, where you couldn't get septic fields out there. There was some sort of anomaly and you couldn't get enough perk tests approved through TDEC to get enough septic systems out there for acre lots, then you would annex to get sewer. But typically it's cost prohibitive.
So
My general sense I get too is the soil does not perk that well. We approved a subdivision off of Avoca Lake, as I recall. Mm-hmm. And I think those were half acre, because
So they would have to been 0.8 acres.
but they were,
Most of all the UGB subdivisions that you see now they're all at least usually an acre and a lot now.
because of a need for a septic.
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
septics, yeah.
Yeah, so they'd have to be annexed in if they wanted to, to be that small of a lot. And that would be a net positive. But definitely, there's gonna be road infrastructure needs that'll have to happen.
do we know what the tax revenue of Hunter's Ridge is? That's actually a good example. What the tax revenue is versus the expense to the city for just maintaining that?
No,
Because I would greatly suspect that it is not positive.
How many homes are in Hunter's Ridge? 50,
80?
80?
At least not
At
as,
an average of 16.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Average 16 to 2,000 a month or a year in property
At least
taxes.
2,000.
Minimum 2,000 a year. And I know that we don't spend, I mean, just rough math and don't, let's say 80.
now keep in mind, we don't have the
Times
infrastructure out there that we
2,000.
need either.
We don't spend 160,000 a year in Hunter's Ridge.
And they're spending,
They probably wish
they
they
have a lot of
did.
sales tax revenue from those property owners too.
Yeah, I mean, the higher your income, the
Double.
higher your sales tax contribution. What is I'm sorry, I got a message to talk to the mic. What is preventing people from going in right now and saying, I'm gonna demolish down Deckard Street, buy it up and build homes there? Is there something preventing them from doing that, or are they just deciding they don't want to do that?
So there's a cost with removing, how do I say this? It's easier to develop a large vacant piece of property than to buy out a series of houses just to rebuild another series of houses.
Right.
You almost become a net zero loss. So there's 5 houses on East Deckard. A lot of the existing cities, older neighborhoods are already at or below the allowable density already. So if I wanted to build 5 houses, I'd almost have to build 5 houses, I would have to buy 5 houses, demolish each one, and build 1 house in their place.
Will adding
It
the
just shakes
mixed-use
out.
type places change that?
Yes, because now there'll be large areas within the older established neighborhoods that are closer to downtown that are currently zoned for, say they're zoned R2, where you could do duplexes. But the density for duplex, you have to have a half an acre to put 1 duplex on it, and it's just completely cost prohibitive. I get developers coming in at least once a week. Look, they want to do duplex developments, but they just can't get the number of units they need to make their finances work. They're like, I could build a duplex on a 10,000 square foot lot. So instead of a house, it'd be duplex on 12,000 square foot lots. I could make that work, but not double. But again, like in about 3 pages, we'll get to that part. So there is incentives for increasing density in the city. But then they're going to, what about the desire to expand your borders and annex. Do you want to do both?
I would say yes. I'm assuming there were builders on the steering committee.
Yes.
How did what was their feeling?
Their feeling was, like I said, just to kind of let the market decide. There's different there's some people that want to live in a new house in town. There's some people that want to live in a new house on the edge of town, or kind of on a rural, they want to live in a neighborhood but in a rural setting. So why make somebody choose if they want to live in a neighborhood on the edge of town in a rural setting but still in a neighborhood? If they can't find that product here, they would go to one of the other cities.
Our neighboring Manchester, what is their minimum lot sizes in their UGB areas? What are their
The same.
values?
The same,
So
because
it'd be 12?
it's all driven by septics, yeah. And then they annexed in, somebody in Coffee County annexes into Manchester, then they can be on sewer, and their minimum lot size is about 10,000 square feet,
Theirs is 10,000?
yeah.
I kind of see them as, that's the competition, right? So when a builder's deciding on where they're gonna build, that would be my only,
I don't think we have I think Tullahoma stands on its own.
I mean, Manchester's building like crazy. There's a new apartment going up every time and when you do talk to the builders, they are choosing to go to just outside, but this may fix some of
One of the
that.
things with Manchester is they have the interstate access that we don't have, and they're a county seat, so it's a little bit different, but that's my opinion. I think Tullahoma has its own unique characteristics.
Well, this 12,000 square foot minimum lot size, I mean, do we need to vote on that? I mean, how do we move past that?
Somebody
we
can,
can't vote.
you know, you should reach some sort of a consensus, we can kind of move on and come back to this.
We need to at least move on. I mean,
This is one of the more belabored points at the steering committee.
yeah.
Each page
It's a
isn't
big
like
change.
this, just
That's
so
a
you-
huge change, a 12-fold change from the original. But let's move on.
Okay.
So we just,
We can come
Take a-
back,
take a
yeah,
note
we
and come
you
back to
can
that
mull
one.
it
Yeah.
over for tonight, and we can visit
Yeah.
it tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think we can vote on anything in that phase.
Okay.
yeah, we're taking consensus, I guess.
Something like that.
Okay, page 47. Suburban areas,
48.
48. Sorry. Page 48. These are suburban areas. These are too developed to be rural, but not so developed to be urban. So these are generally kind of on the periphery of town, again, generally. And there are 6 main subtypes. Let's go ahead and whittle down on page 50. The first main subtype on page 50 is the suburban corridor areas. These areas feature primarily post-1950s development with strong automobile orientation. The locations, think of the suburban corridor areas are North and South Jackson Street and East Carroll Street. So just kind of for your real-life context of it. Optimal land uses are retail, dining, fast food, personal services, related uses. The plan says, while not currently prevalent, there's also potential for multifamily housing. So right now, the areas of North Jackson, South Jackson, and Carroll are all zoned C2, which is your general commercial zoning district, which allows for all of those uses, except for you cannot have any type of residential housing in a commercial district. With this plan, multifamily housing being apartments and or townhomes would be introduced as a potential permitted use in the new C2 zoning districts along these corridors, if this language remained in the plan. So again, that, as I discussed several moments ago, the plan's trying to facilitate, one of the kind of goals and objectives of the plan is to facilitate more housing types. The consultants heard a lot of public comment about wanting more diverse housing types beyond the single-family detached residential, which is the overwhelming majority of the housing inventory in the city today. So there was a desire to have more affordable apartments, high-end apartments, because there's sections of the population that don't want to own property. They want to be long-term rentals. Either they're here temporarily because of the base, or they're contract employees, or some older residents and or younger residents don't want to own property. They don't want the maintenance of it. They want to live in a townhome or an apartment setting and at the full range of incomes. So this plan is providing incentives through the place types map to allow for that type of development potential, i.e. in the suburban areas. So we could be seeing, in layman's terms, if this plan was adopted, you would be seeing potential apartment or townhome developments occurring on North Jackson, South Jackson, and or Carroll Street, mixed in with the retail and restaurants and office buildings. The density and form that's discussed is most buildings are 1 story in height. This place type is generally suburban in form. Such areas would have fewer curb cuts, driveways, more parking on the side of the buildings in the rear. We'll get to the section on the design standards for North and South Jackson and Carroll at a later point. Any comments on the suburban corridor areas? Okay, moving on.
I'll make a comment.
Okay, thank you.
I'm disappointed to see that we removed the language from the Walker Group to eliminate front garage, drive straight into the garage from the street. And they were proposing to put the garages to the side of the house or to the rear of the house. And for all the suburban types, we've removed that language. I did not get that as an overwhelming comment from the steering committee. I only got that from one party. I was disappointed to see that removed.
Okay.
We on page 50 or
We'll
51?
get that, it's on page 51, we're about to
Okay.
get there.
No, I agree with you, Mayor. I'd much rather see garages on the sides of the homes,
Side
Yeah.
over here.
or rear.
Well, it was in the plan.
Yeah, the steering committee lined that out, so.
And that, as I pointed out, that came from one source.
Are we on that page now?
No. We were back, we can skip there. That's on page 51. For all the 3 different suburban neighborhood residential types, suburban neighborhood low, suburban neighborhood medium, and suburban neighborhood high, the consultants put in the following language. While lots are typically accessed by a front driveway, I can't read this.
What was the justification?
Hold on. The visual impacts of garages should be minimized by 1, placing it at the rear of the lot, 2, recessing it behind the front facade if the garage door faces the street, or 3, turn it so the garage doors do not face the street. So this would eliminate the scenario where you would have a garage, an attached garage door that is forward the front facade of the house, where the garage sticks out in front of the house.
This is to encourage alleyway use and stuff like that. And I mean, this is suburban. I don't know if that's.
No, because there aren't alleys in suburban. It really
Yeah.
is to eliminate, like I just said, the house type where the garage is the main focus of the front facade of the house. The garage is push forward and the rest of the house is back behind that line.
I'm with the mayor.
You're saying with this in there, it eliminates that? With this
Yes,
out
so,
of there-
so as houses came in for building permits, we would check and make sure that the front door, where the front door of the house, the garage door would have to be behind that plane of that front facade. Or it would be a side-loaded garage where the garage door is on the side, or a detached garage. Or at least in line. It could be rear or side. So there are side-loaded garages too. It can be a detached as well, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd like to put that back in.
I'm of
Yeah, I think we have a,
similar.
it's much
similar
better
feeling.
look. It just look, and it would force less density. It would, much better curb appeal.
We'll look at that area down Jackson and over here and all the way down Jackson. Over here on Cedar Lane and is that somewhere?
This is a smaller.
So do you have consensus on that topic of the garages?
Yeah, so was it because of density? Is that why?
No, it's just, it's, I think it's aesthetic.
Pulling it out or leaving it? What was the reason for pulling it out? Striking that?
To not regulate the architectural design of individual houses.
That's tough. I see
Does does that seem correct, Mayor? Okay.
I recall that was one piece of it. The other
Yeah.
piece was, it might take a little bit larger slice of your lot to put a driveway around.
To get the driveways around, yeah,
So
potentially.
you might have to build a smaller house in order to accommodate that. But my reasoning is strictly for aesthetics.
Yeah.
Make the community more attractive.
We're talking about fairly urban corridors, right? Like,
There's suburban.
These are the suburban areas.
I know it's
so
suburban, but I mean, we're talking about Cedar Lane, Jackson Street.
We're talking about,
Suburban
I'm
areas.
sorry, I'm trying to chew. So we're talking about everything that's on page 48, that's a yellow color.
I would think that we'd want to do what
So
we
all
can.
of, to the southeast quadrant, all those established neighborhoods, everything that's in yellow, Terra Estates, Macon Manor, Up Avoca Road, Wiley Creek Road, all those areas, all those houses. They would have specific criteria of how those, where the garages would be built.
We're talking about the pink?
No, we're talking about anything that's in yellow. We jumped to the suburban residential section. Suburban neighborhood low, suburban neighborhood medium, and suburban neighborhood high. So
Okay.
anything that's in light yellow, medium yellow, or kind of browny yellow.
Would that be anything that's R1 or R2 today in our current zoning?
It would be R1, R2,
Some
yeah,
R3.
yes, sorry.
So what, the Avoca, Riley Creek would not have been built. Those garages are all facing forward, right?
I mean, they can still face forward, they just can't. Sorry, we'll just do this on the fly. Let me try to find an example for you. Garage. I'm trying to find a picture for you. That. This is where, oh good lord. Where was it? Hold on. that, you see how the garage is forward, the front elevation of the house? The front door is back behind where the garage is. The consultants are wanting to eliminate that scenario. You can still have a garage in the front of your house. It just has to either be in line with your front
Okay.
door or behind your front door.
Oh,
So
Not a major.
so leaving it in is saying you have to recess the front entry from the
Yeah.
garage. It has
Right.
nothing to do with which way the garage faces.
Right, you
Okay.
can, right, it can be a
I'd say
side loaded,
leave it
it's
straight.
trying to live, yeah, it's trying to, so like this scenario would be okay, because the front of the house is here and the garage doors are recessed. You see it?
yeah, I understand better now. I'm
trying to-
indifferent.
A little
After,
less obvious, not much.
I'm
For
indifferent
these
now.
scenarios, where here's the garage
After
door, see
understanding
how,
where it's going
the
to.
as you're driving along, the predominant feature is the garage doors, and then the front door is tucked back in the shadows.
So just let it
I'd
all the
rather
way
see the
across.
front door than the garage.
But they can still be flush. The current
Here's a better one, see how
Emerald.
the main thing is from the street, you can see the garage doors, and the front door is way back behind. They're trying to eliminate that scenario.
So leaving that in would give us the scenario where the garage door is the predominant feature.
By taking
possibly.
it out. So the consultants are adding the language to eliminate the garages sticking out towards the road. The steering committee wanted to take that out, so then you could build any type of house. Your garage could be any which way you wanted it. So I think the mayor's point is that he wanted to add the consultant's language back in to eliminate the garage facing forward, jutting out forward scenarios, as illustrated in the pictures.
It's an improvement. It's still not ideal. It's better than having the garage right out in front.
Like, in like,
Yeah.
out there.
So,
Well, you've got two issues. Two issues are, do you want to leave the garage facing the street, period? Or do you want to allow the garage to face the street but recessed? That's the two issues.
I'd rather not see it at all, but I don't, that's going to be hard to do on a .25 acre lot.
Yeah.
I hate that my garage,
Okay?
I hate that my garage is on the side, right? My driveway's not big enough, so I've got to back out of my garage, pull in, maneuver around. It's a pain. I mean, me personally, I would rather just drive straight in.
I'd be fine flush.
Yeah. I like the idea of not telling you how to.
And here's an example, a photographic example of like a flush. So that's what they mean by flush, you can still pull right into your garage, but it's lined up with the front facade of the house. It's not jutting forward.
So that would be acceptable if we put this
So if the
back in.
consultant's language was left in, that would be fine. That would meet the plan code.
They don't show you the cars sitting out in the front yard.
No comments from the public, please.
What effectively you're doing, if you eliminate this, you're essentially eliminating design standards for suburban housing.
Right.
That's what you're doing. We spent a lot of money to get some advice from a consulting company, and this is the heart of what they've recommended for suburban areas. And we're tossing it down the drain.
No, I agree. I'd like to stick with what the consultant came up with. It's not, ideally, I'd like to see the garages around the side or some, but this is at least a move in the right direction to make it more aesthetic. I really don't want to see the garage just right out in front of the house.
Yeah, I mean, so I do see, it doesn't say that it can be, I mean, I'd be okay with it being flush. I don't see that in 1, 2,
Well, that's a
3.
different, place it at the rear of the lot, recess it behind the front facade of the house. Or turn it so it doesn't
Yeah.
face the street. I mean, we could add the word
I
flush.
mean,
so
I would be
clear.
okay with saying flush,
Flush
as
or
long as it doesn't
recess.
make you have to side.
Or flush
I'd be
instead
for,
of
I'd
recess.
be for adding it back in.
Yeah, I'd be for adding
Just
it back
passes.
in, but
Yeah.
add flush.
I mean, flush is acceptable added back in, is it not?
No.
Oh, okay. I mean, my personal opinion is that the house that she showed first looked better than the second one, but at the same
Might
time.
as well. I like the garage, and I like the garage, that look, that style, but that's just a preference, but we're not here to,
I agree with
Yeah,
that.
To do
remember,
preference.
it's for the entire city.
Yes.
yeah.
So,
I would be okay with leaving it in, but adding flush, number 4, to flush to all those.
Okay, well, we have general consensus on that. So I
Okay.
think the next point is very similar. The next marked out section from the steering committee.
It's the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're all
What
three the
page are we-
same for the.
they're all the exact
Yeah.
same thing
It's all
for
the same,
low, medium,
yeah.
high.
Do one, do
Yeah.
all.
Okay.
I think we can move on.
If we may, can we go back to page 50?
50, all right.
Yes, because we discussed the suburban corridor areas, but we didn't get to the suburban office areas. This is, one moment, please, on page 50. This is on the screen, and your place types map, if you're looking at it, this is a blue color. This is a new place type that we don't currently have. So in our land use plan and in our zoning ordinance, there is not a purely office park or office designation. So if a developer comes to the city saying, I want to establish a corporate headquarters or a medical office in your established office park district, we don't have one. So this is an effort by the consultants based on public comments to establish some specific suburban office park areas. The main one would be just outside of the Tullahoma Airport, where currently Jacobs and Ascend are located, and then also along a little bit of Washington Street and Kings Lane, where there's already kind of an established, the thought is working off kind of the established pattern that's already begun. There's quite a few office buildings along Kings Lane, be it if they're professional offices towards Washington, and then there's kind of a large node of medical type uses further to the southeast. And like I said, there's kind of already established some large headquarter type office uses around the airport, like I just said, around Jacobs and Ascend. So it'd kind of be building off of that established character. The steering committee liked the idea, however, there was some concern. The optimal land uses designated says just medical office and corporate headquarter offices. There was discussion about, well, what about like kind of health ancillary uses like,
Retail.
no, what's the senior living,
So,
the place, I always forget the name, Parkview.
Parkview.
Yeah, like Parkview wouldn't fit into this scenario. So they wanted to add in under optimal land uses, under the suburban office, healthcare associated residential uses. So again, in these blue areas, kind of between the hospital and the airport, you could have some nursing homes, you could have assisted living facilities like NHC, Parkview, those type of uses would further be allowed as appropriate, again, closer to the hospital uses, as well as office support retail uses. They came up with the idea, okay, well, we have these corporate headquarters and large medical office parks, it is common to have some ancillary support medical or retail uses like a sandwich shop, a copy place, you know, some ancillary miscellaneous retail, a retail place that sells perhaps medical equipment, that kind of thing. So they added in, under optimal land uses for potential uses within that zoning district, healthcare associated residential uses, and office support retail uses.
Does Parkview not fit in anywhere else? Say a
Parkview-
building like Parkview?
Parkview would be permitted just in a residential, in one of the residential land use categories.
Blue area was to fill a need for corporate,
Medical or corporate office only.
yeah, I mean,
So they, I guess
sticking,
the thought was that was a little bit too restrictive, just limiting the capacity. These areas have to either be just one type, just a type of office only. So like, well, what about, like I said, kind of health-related residential uses that would be appropriate to be close to the hospital, but not necessarily not wanting to be on North Jackson. Again, trying to build off of the established development pattern of Parkview and NHC kind of in that area.
Is it,
I mean, Parkview's not really a medical, it's not an assisted living or it's just a senior living. You just
Right.
got to be over 55, so it's really not a medical, a healthcare
No, I mean,
related
I mean,
residential.
I could interpret it that it's over 55, that it's,
But it says on their website it is not.
no, I know, I thank you, sir.
Just because you're old doesn't mean
No.
you need health care.
No, I agree with you. It's an over 55, but they tend to generally want to be close to medical-type facilities.
is it something that we, is it something that we could, permitted use only, something like that? For, places like Parkview and stuff like that, so you can't have some kind of check to make sure that you just can't develop it residential?
I'm sorry, I missed part of that.
I'm just saying, is it something that we need to have like permitted use only for residential applications for
I
that?
mean, it could be something where, again, down the line, once we start revising the zoning ordinance, I guess what you're getting at is maybe limiting it, so you don't want all of your office uses taken up by these residential uses, is that? We could
Yeah.
make them like permitted upon review and have design criteria or special site plan approval for
I
them.
mean, that's pretty much what I'm saying is like, that way we don't fill up all of our office space with a bunch of Parkviews.
Can we just leave it out for now, and if the need arises, review it?
Well, right now would be, if we're, what
Well,
we're
right
talking
now,
about.
if we ran with the way with the way the map is laid out, and with this language, Parkview and NHC would both become non-conforming.
Well, can we make, since they're right beside each other, just change this blue to whatever color it needs to be for that little block of buildings, and then make all the rest of it blue? I mean, they're
You
right
could,
there.
I mean, it's built, yeah.
but
I mean,
Yeah,
if I'm looking to open a corporate office, I don't, no offense to anybody, but I don't want to open I wish I had, my multi-million-dollar company by a bunch of nursing homes or assisted living facilities. I want a corporate environment. I love the retail, the small, I wish we had Jimmy John's back. I mean, I love that. Maybe a small Starbucks or something there. I mean, that all fits with the corporate. If we're trying to attract these corporations, that makes sense, but putting an assisted living facility right beside my corporate headquarters it's not attractive. I wouldn't think.
My only comment would be is that,
Unless my CEO lives there.
My only comment would be is there enough of this in the map? From the economic committee, and that's probably a Winston question, maybe. Like, do we need more of this than what we already have? I'm definitely, I don't share Daniel's or Mr. Barry's sentiment for the assisted living facility, but at the same time, like, do we have enough? A large portion of it's chunked up with that, but I definitely will share his sentiment with, we need to make sure that we can have retail shops in there where people can go eat lunch and stuff like that to make it a foster that environment. Is there, does the economic committee see a need for it? Like,
So I think that the need to develop office space, primarily this blue color, it's definitely is needed. And this is more, we don't have any zones like this currently now except for commercial.
yeah.
It fits a need.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just down in Huntsville, and they got a whole they got an area the size of Tullahoma that's dedicated to office space. I mean, I don't think we need that, but I mean, do we see ourselves maybe expanding with some federal contracts for the base or things like that, similar to Jacobs and Microcraft and stuff like that? A place that's actually not developed that I think almost falls into the same thing. Speaking of Microcraft, is over here on Croft Lane off of
Craft.
Big Springs. That's a similar type area, and and there's some, aside from the cemetery, there's some area there to consider maybe making that in the same zone.
That's good work. Particularly Wilson.
Yeah.
What does the airport think about? I mean, every time somebody tries to build a home near the airport, we hear from them. How do they feel about assisted living facilities right there on their border?
These blue areas are outside of the, so, through FAA, there are, based on the runway type and distance, there are cones of, how do I say this? Potential hazard sites where certain uses aren't permitted, primarily schools, daycares, nursing homes, hospitals. These areas are not within those cones. Typically,
None of the residential ones are either. They just
typically, they are concerned with just single-family residential. In
In
close
fact, they
proximity
had-
to the airport.
excuse me.
Go ahead, Mayor. I'm
Excuse
sorry.
me, Mayor. In fact, the airport, that sat on their board, they have had no problems with anything that's on C2. Commercial's fine, which nursing homes fall under that. There was a zone just across the street from the entrance to the airport, which was on C2 until just recently we changed it. They had no problem at all with that. It's residential areas that they have concerns about. The residents in time will begin to complain about the noise from the airport. And the airport was there first, and they're gonna be making more noise, so they anticipate that becoming a problem with residents. They have no problem with commercial.
Well, and I would think you would have the same, I mean, a nursing home, assisted living may be zoned commercial or residential, but essentially it's 50 residents living in a single building, so it's really no different than me living in a house on, I think is what, we may call it a different zone, but it's still, that's where I'm living.
I would have thought.
Yeah, I belabored that too.
Or three.
Too long. I don't think we need assisted living there, but if it is, hopefully nobody knows it, so.
Hey, Mary, I have a general question. If we adopt this plan and all these new place types, do we do away with all the current R1, R2 language zoning?
All that's gonna be
designation?
revised.
Just
Mhm. All of it
do away
will
with it?
need to be revised to implement this plan.
Yeah, so, yeah. Total replacement. And I know, I remember there was talk for a little while of a hotel going in, possibly, along Cedar Lane in that current blue area. I don't know if this would preclude a hotel going in.
Correct. Well,
No, that would be
I don't-
better
I mean,
use
we-
than
again, may-
assisted living.
I'm sorry, sir?
I mean, that would be a better use. A hotel in a business office area would make more
Correct.
sense than
Right.
Extended stay.
healthcare, residential.
Right.
Can we swap those?
Yeah, and that's a common,
I mean, you could,
the larger corporate parks that I've been to, or in jurisdictions that I've worked in, they have the office settings, some retail use, and it's not uncommon to have an extended stay right there with meeting space in the first floor and for conferences and
Right.
whatnot.
That's very business-like, yeah.
you could almost argue that would be office support retail use, but
That's what I was gonna, I was like, I
Like-
could stretch, we could stretch
Yeah.
it that far, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could.
Or could
Again, we haven't written the
specify it.
zoning code. Remember, these are kind of broad brushes that, at the comp plan level.
Yeah, we could make that fit. Okay. It is, I mean, just looking at our city, it's not a whole lot of office space. You know,
No, it's
a
not.
lot of it already is office.
And
mean,
and
it's
remember
zoned
that
out there.
offices are allowed in commercial zoning districts as
Uh-huh.
well.
Uh-huh.
But this would be an area where only
Yeah.
offices would be located.
And
And ancillary, right.
And is it,
assisted living or something.
I'm sorry. And I mean, but is that something that we as a city want to foster? Like, would we want to see an office park because we don't have one? Would that help us, economically?
Yeah, the consultants, based on the economic analysis, strongly encouraged us to establish an office
Yeah.
park setting. And we have had, I've received calls from clients saying, where's your office park? And I was like, we don't have a formal one, however, and I point them in generally the airport direction, again, to build off of these momentum that has been established with Ascend, and that's the closest thing we have to an office park. And there's considerable amounts of vacant land out there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, with
I'm sure you've
I
all
guess-
seen it going to the airport, so,
I'm sorry, Mary.
it's okay.
But the vacant land out here is for the airport, is it not, or is there enough vacant lots in what we have established there already? Because I
There's
haven't
quite a
been,
amount of vacant land that's out there that's not city-owned, that's under different private development.
I just mean what we have designated as office space. Is there enough vacant land in the office space area that's already zoned with this dark blue?
I would say,
quite a bit.
I guess
Okay.
I can't answer that. I don't know what enough is.
Well, I realize
I
that.
mean, I
That's
think it's
kinda-
enough to serve the needs that we have, and again, remember, this is only a 20-year plan. If this,
I
in
guess
effect,
this is
fills
all I
up, we could always start looking at expanding it.
Okay.
But there's quite a bit of land, basically that whole middle, all those blocks.
Yeah.
As you drive to the airport, that's all vacant land where the old World War II barracks are. And there's quite a bit of vacant or underdeveloped land that's along Kings Lane as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there was a personal comment about, or a comment about the World War II barracks back there and not dissolving them, but I don't know if that's worth anything talking about. Anyway, let's move on.
So leave the healthcare associated residential uses in there,
I would make the same
revise the
argument.
language.
I would make the same argument we did on the suburban areas and striking that. We paid people a lot of money to do this plan, and they didn't include healthcare in the corporate offices, so I would say strike it.
I mean, that's
And
fine
listen
as
to the
long as,
consultants.
I'm for that as long as we carve out enough zone for what needs to be, that's already existing.
So strike it, but make the existing
Change the map.
Conforming.
residential uses conforming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the need arises, we can always look at changing it later, right? But let's not start that way. Make it a,
Yeah, that works.
Is there consensus on that one, guys, gentlemen? Okay.
Works for me.
There's just not a lot of suburban office space, so let's keep it.
Yeah,
keep it at that.
but I do think what we're looking at is on the boundaries, so should be able to be carved out.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've already discussed suburban neighborhood, low, medium, high. Were there any comments, questions on that beyond the garage issue? That anybody had based on public's comments that you reviewed, your own comments? Okay, seeing none?
Let's move on.
Page 52, the urban areas. So this is your downtown core, your downtown corridors, neighborhood centers, traditional neighborhood existing, and traditional neighborhood new. Page 53 is just some photo representations. Okay, so downtown core. There's a section further into the plan that there was probably about 8 or 9 pages just on the downtown development as far as design standards, parking that we'll get to. But this section just establishes the uses and the boundaries of your downtown core. So now the new downtown would be, I don't want to say new, I'm sorry. The boundaries of the downtown core would be Moore Street to the north, to Warren Street on the south. Warren Street ends where Urpet is. Atlantic Street to the east, so downtown core is not going across the tracks. And then the Rock Creek floodplain to the west. So those would be the boundaries of the downtown core areas. Basically, the existing uses will remain the same with the addition of allowing some infill housing developments. So there could be apartments and/or townhomes as part of the downtown core.
Did you say the corridor not going across the tracks?
No, downtown core does not cross the tracks. That area is going to be included in the downtown corridor area. But the downtown core, so your main downtown area
Sorry, I thought you said corridor.
would be in the downtown core, more to Warren, Atlantic, South Atlantic, I'll say it like that, to the Rock Creek floodplain would be your downtown core to be developed, like I said, once we get to the downtown section, much like the, how Lincoln has been developed. That same type of potential density, intensity, with the addition of more housing options, either high-density housing. It would look, again, similar to how Lincoln was historically developed, where there'll be shops, retail, restaurants, office on the first floor with 1 or if not 2 stories of potential condos or apartments above in that core area. Where Grundy would look like Lincoln does, Lauderdale would end up looking like Lincoln does as far as mass scale, streetscapes. And that would be your newly established downtown core. Thoughts?
I'm looking at the, yeah, it looks like you have downtown core defined to be in, what's the, next to this gray area in the flood zone of Rock Creek there. Is that something, I know there was some additional talk about expanding the Rock Creek Greenway and things like that. Is that something that we want to donate or designate to be able to be developed, or do we want to preserve that as a, try to put that as a park?
So what intersection?
It's off of, I guess, if you extend West Moore Street down across Rock Creek, currently there's no road there, and
Right.
it is designated as a downtown core. But I would think that, I don't know what the gray is, it says transportation.
The gray is the railroad tracks.
No, I'm south of Jackson.
Oh, White Plain right there.
Where the industrial meets the core,
Yeah,
and there's the industrial, the core, and then there's like a park.
the field across the street from St. Paul's where there is a lot of baseball practice and football practice, and then abutting that, it looks like you have a downtown core defined to be in that flood zone that I would think would want to be. I would want
Yes,
to.
that's going to be where the new proposed Rock Creek Park would be.
Yeah. Does it need to be zoned downtown core? Should it be zoned?
I think it should be in the core area because the southern boundary is,
That's wrong. You're talking this whole.
it
I'm
is,
talking-
it's in the,
I'm talking
it's in the
right
red
here.
area. You see it?
I think he's asking if it should be. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Not whether it is, but should it be?
Like the field across from St. Paul's there, West Grizzard Extended,
Well,
is gray. I don't know what's gray.
I think that's like, what's the place where you can,
Lighthouse.
yeah, Lighthouse and all that area. What's it,
Like,
or not Lighthouse, what's the place, where you can donate clothes and stuff?
The attic outlet.
Attic Outlet, I think that's.
that's
Attic Outlet.
industrial.
Mm.
Light,
I think that
I think what
gray
you're
part's-
calling gray is like kind of light purplish.
And those are factories.
That's
there, too.
industrial.
It's
It's old
industrial, yeah, it looks
That's
just
an old
like,
warehouse.
Old wood.
Yeah.
So the
Right
back
there.
of the church property where the green, where there's like a big, yeah,
That's
there's
the
a
old
big
Wilson-
playfield.
that's the Wilson,
That's
right?
industrial,
The
it's
Wilson,
floodplain, but it's in the industrial place type. And then that property that's right, kind of at the bottom of the hill, catty corner from the new police station, that is in the, urban core area.
Yeah, that over here.
on Wilson goes back.
It is Wilson. Yeah, Wilson runs the length of Growl Lane. But yeah, there's a, to the, I guess the southeast of that gray industrial area is zoned, or not zoned, I shouldn't say, but it's designated as downtown core.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that we had kind of wanted to have some distinction on expanding the Rock Creek Greenway and stuff like that into essentially that area. I mean, it's a floodplain right now anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that needs to be,
Well,
if that's the right color.
That's just defining the downtown area, right?
Well, it's defining the downtown area, but, I mean, so what, even though the area is floodplain, we still, that property is under private development, private ownership.
Mhm.
So you still have to designate a place type for it. You can't just say, well, it's floodplain, you can't develop it. They still have the right to develop something. Not, the entire property is not, floodplain. So that this specific piece of property is owned by a private individual.
Mhm.
So we have to,
Okay, so it has to be something.
legally, you have to give them some development potential. It could be developed with an urban scale use that is, that goes along with the Rock Creek property
Okay,
concept. Or this, I mean, or the city, could buy the property and make it a park. We haven't had that discussion yet. We haven't gotten that part yet.
But to change that would make it what's there.
You could
not
certainly
conforming,
change it, right?
would the area he's referencing be basically this?
I think what,
maybe, yeah, that's probably true, yeah.
Well,
I think what he's,
Okay.
I can't speak for Paul, but I think what he's saying is that, I can't even remember what page the Rock Creek Park is on.
the thing I'm looking at.
It's further,
You're saying make it green instead of red.
Yeah, but if we can't make it green.
Somebody's
because-
already there.
make it,
Yeah.
what is green?
Parks.
Parks and Rec. Well, but again, Parks and Rec are for area.
I
it's
understand that,
It's a
yes.
little bit of a slippery slope.
Oh.
Parks and Rec are for city-owned property. It's not necessarily appropriate to designate a private property. Okay, your land, it can only be a park. Well, are you gonna,
I get that.
is the city gonna
It's
buy it,
Trying
Right.
to decide, my interpretation of this map is kind of like what we want it to be, I would
I know.
think. And so
I understand.
but I understand
I
why
just
we
have
can't
to
do it
think of
too.
the other, I have to consider the other side of it
Yes,
too.
understand.
Yeah, they're privately owned.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a hang-up, trying to build the greenway the right way. They built a sidewalk instead of a greenway, and
Okay, so that's your downtown core. I'm gonna, if I don't hear, if there's a pause in discussion for 10 seconds, I'm moving on. Okay. Downtown corridors, these are areas along, so these are kind of the arms that come out from the core. So this is kind of your South Jackson Street area by, let me go back to the map here. Immediately off the core. So kind of down by the South Jackson Civic Center, getting almost to Carroll Street. This is the areas, Lincoln Street across the tracks. This would all be that downtown core. Once you cross the Rock Creek and you go towards Sonic and all that food line, that's all in this corridor area. As well as the hopefully newly redesigned South Anderson Street area. So those would be designated as your downtown corridors. Primarily, land uses are retail, dining, personal services, office, institutional uses, lodging, with the introduction, again, to moderate and high-density housing and public spaces.
Yeah, there is
Again,
some,
there's kind of back to, I believe, what the mayor had indicated, and I said earlier, there's been a lot of public interest in new opportunities for apartments, duplexes, townhomes, while at the same time trying to protect the property rights and investments of the established single-family neighborhoods. So there's kind of a balance there. Well, if, in layman's terms, okay, if people want affordable housing apartments or high-end apartments or affordable housing townhomes or high-end townhome developments, where are they placed? So the compromise is not necessarily to put some in established single-family areas, but the majority of which would be to create mixed-use areas within kind of the established commercial and urban areas close to downtown. So that's why you're seeing this inclusion of medium to high density starting to pop into these commercial areas. And these can also be vertically, one thing that I have, I've talked to Mr. Brooks about it a lot and other people at the city, that I'm not seeing a lot of here, if any, no vertically integrated uses. So there's a lot of opportunity for all these one-story office, retail uses to build provided they meet building code and structural code, to build second stories on all these established one-story non-residential buildings and put all sorts of apartments up there. There's quite a few downtown buildings that you see on Lincoln, and all those second stories, those could all be apartments.
When you
So
say,
there's a lot of missed opportunity. In my professional opinion, there's a lot of missed opportunity for increased housing within our existing building inventory.
when you say
And this could
affordable,
implement that. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Daniel.
when you say affordable, you're talking like what normal people can afford,
Any
not,
range. I
not
mean-
section.
Any of it. It could be Section 8
Now,
to,
currently, you can only do that in an R3, right?
we don't regulate the price of units.
Right, but you can't build
So R3 could be an apartment
apartments.
building. The building could be Section 8, or the apartment building, each unit could go for $4,000 a month. It could be a high-end apartment building.
I mean, I don't think we want subsidized housing in our downtown
We don't.
core, but we do want, I mean, I'm a normal person. I can't afford a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 home, so that would be
Townhome.
great.
Typically, the
I
market of
think-
a
I just think
specific
affordable is a
sub-area
big
kind of
word.
regulates the type of housing. Typically, zoning and land use doesn't regulate the price of the housing, because you have to comply with Fair Housing Act. So usually the market drives that. So an apartment is an apartment. If it's in a lower income part of town, then the market will drive that the apartment will probably be at a certain rate. If there's a apartment complex that's built in an affluent part of town, the market itself will dictate those prices.
Right, so we don't regulate the price, but we
No.
do regulate and say, hey, you can't build an apartment complex
Here,
here. And we do
right.
that for.
Or as you could build into, once we get into more of the implementation mechanism of the plan, the zoning district, you could establish like minimum sizes, like each unit has to be at least 2,000 square feet. That by nature would start kind of formulating the type of product you want in a certain situation. Okay. Neighborhood centers. Yes? Good. Good, okay. Neighborhood centers. These are, from a planning perspective, let's go back to the map. Neighborhood centers, these are kind of, we call these established commercial nodes. These are areas that have long been kind of a little commercial developments kind of here and there that we're attempting to make conforming. An example would be at the corner of, say, what is it, Hogan and Country Club? There's like there's like 3 little buildings there. There's the trophy place, the barber shop, the children's clothing store, and then there's the trophies shop, and then there's another, maybe forgive me, I can't remember,
Right,
maybe
there's
a pet
I-
grooming place.
I think there's
That
a
is a little
bookstore.
commercial node. Commercial node, it's surrounded by residential uses, but they're kind of older, historic pockets of commercial that it's appropriate to make conforming with these neighborhood center commercial nodes. Typically, you don't establish these neighborhood centers in new vacant areas. They're to acknowledge, like I just said, little commercial activity centers that tend to have uses that feed off the surrounding residential area. There are no edits proposed with that category. Traditional neighborhood existing. These are the areas, we're on page 55. These are the older neighborhoods of town, relatively high density, primarily residential. These areas extend to east to Roosevelt Street. It extends roughly 5 blocks to the north and south of Lincoln Street. Other locations are on Jackson, on both sides of Rock Creek. Traditional neighborhood existing, let's see. On your map, these are the bright orange colored neighborhoods. So these are the neighborhoods south of Roosevelt, Grizzard, Moore, Grundy, Anderson, Polk, Poplar, Cornish, kind of those areas surrounding the elementary school, as well as across, kind of over towards where my office building is on Collins, on the other side, back behind Food Lion. So these are the older established neighborhoods. Basically, they would remain as they are. A lot of these areas are already established or zoned to be R1 or R2. The minimum density of the single-family housing would be 4 units per acre, which is R1, with the maximum density of 15 units per acre to higher density residential. So there is some incentive built into the plan to increase the density in this area if a developer were to come in, as I said about an hour ago, where if you could get 15 dwelling units per acre, it might make economic sense to go ahead and buy 4 smaller single-family houses in an established area and end up coming up with an acre of land, and then you could get 15 units. You could do a moderate or modest-sized townhome development or a couple of small apartment buildings. And remember, like the 15 units per acre, that's a maximum density with the consideration you still have to get parking in, detention, and landscaping and all your infrastructure. So that would become an incentive, again, like I said, we get a lot of very small developers wanting to come in and do like 2 or 3 duplexes here or there and everywhere, but with the very low density that the current plan and zoning allow, it's cost prohibitive. But if you could get up to 15 dwelling units per acre, it would, that if itself would, the extra rooftops that they would get would be the incentive. There is language that says it is generally more walkable than the Tullahoma suburban areas. Infill buildings should look to surrounding older buildings to determine the appropriate building and setbacks. So what I anticipate is that when we go to the zoning regulations for this new zoning district, there would be language about breaking up buildings so they had the same mass and scale of, say, the surrounding single-family neighborhoods. So it would prevent one big building with 15 units on it. We would say no more than, one building can only have 3 dwelling units attached before you had to start the next building, trying to keep the building small, similar in scale to the single-family houses, as opposed to, we can kind of control the massing and scale to make it more integrated into the development pattern of that area. Okay, not hearing anything? Okay, no.
Hey,
Traditional.
Before we move on, we've been
Okay.
at this for almost 2 hours. I say we just take about a 5-minute break
Yes,
and come right back at it.
okay, thank you.
another one that's built up 30 feet from the roadway.
Am I being clear? Am I being clear as I'm explaining things? Okay. Okay.
It's terrible, Mary.
No, I just want to make sure you understand.
We need to keep some.
I don't understand.
The only thing that I was lost on was the garages.
With the what?
The only thing I was really lost on was the garages.
Yeah, that's what I was like, let me show you. Oh! Yeah, I know.
I thought I was completely the corridor.
They call them, we
I
call
wonder, is there a
planners
spot
call
for
them
me in
snout
front of
houses.
you?
The snouts, the garage snout sticking out. We do.
They can look really good, but it's like, I get the point.
In the city of Tullahoma.
Okay, traditional neighborhood new, I think we're there.
Okay. This is a mildly exciting concept. So, if you look at your place types map, these are the area, these are primarily large, undeveloped or underdeveloped residential areas in the suburban parts of town. They are either light orange or they're the yellow with the polka dots on the map. These would be areas where a developer or a property owner would come in through the planned unit development process to do a large mixed-use product. By mixed use, it says that relative to the other parts of Tullahoma, this place type residential density could reach as high as 20 units per acre for specific housing types, but gross density should be much less. Optimal land uses range in a range of house and lot sizes, opportunities for attached housing, which are townhomes, multifamily, and some limited commercial. So they have also provided a visual example of what these would look like. So, let me enlarge it for the public. So, originally, the developers had, on page 55, the minimum site size, you would have to start with at least 20 or 25 acres. The steering committee wanted to reduce that down to 10 acres, so more properties could take advantage of this option. If it's in light orange on the place type maps, it's already in this traditional neighborhood new designation. If it's polka dot, if it's yellow, it's suburban low neighborhood, which is R1. But if it has the dots on it, it has the option of invoking the traditional neighborhood new design standards through the planned unit development process. On the map, this is a very common planning technique. These are called mixed-use developments, where you are on a main road, usually an arterial or collector. You have a very large undeveloped piece of property, say 10 acres or greater. There's some commercial development on the front, then the front being closer to the main road. Then there's some townhomes and apartment buildings, and then the rest of the development are different size lots for single-family detached development. The steering committee tended to generally like this idea. I will say if you look through the survey in your appendix, when asked, again, we had over 1,200 residents answer the online survey during our public comment period last fall, which is a huge number considering that we only have 20,000 residents. A mixed-use development housing type was the #2 most requested type of housing. So there's definitely a public interest in living and having these types of housing developments. The edits from the planning, from the steering committee came in. There was concern that if not specified, a developer could come in and see that, well, it says I could have residential development reach 20 units per acre. I have a 50-acre site. I want the whole thing to be 20 units per acre. I want just to do apartments. So you would have a scenario, say, let me just pick miscellaneous piece of property here. Out on Old Shelbyville Road, all this polka dot area, somebody could have a 50-acre site and say, I just want to do 20 units per acre for apartments, 20 units times 50, that is 1,000 apartments. Clearly, that's quite a bit of growth that the city would be seeing. So the intent of this land use designation is that it should be a mix of uses. So the steering committee proposed the language there you'll see in your red line on page 56. The proposed maximum ratios of the mix of uses would be a maximum of 10% non-residential development, so only 10% of the entire site could be some neighborhood serving commercial uses, like a small restaurant at the entry of your subdivision, dry cleaner, nail salon, those types of uses. 20, and then a maximum 20% could be duplexes, apartment, or townhomes. And then the remaining 70% would be detached single-family houses.
And that's of acreage, 10% of acreage.
Yes.
Would a
say-
condo fit as a single-family?
A condo would be within the 20% of duplex, apartment, townhome
Oh.
developments.
Okay.
So those would be your condos. So if you had a 100-acre site, theoretically, which is a pretty big site for within the city, but if you had 100 acres, just for a nice round number, 10 acres of that could be for commercial development, neighborhood serving commercial development. 20 acres of that, with a maximum density of 20 units per acre, could be duplex, apartments, townhomes. So that would be about 4,400 townhomes or apartments or a mix thereof. And then the remaining 70 acres, which is generally, say, 4 units per acre, that would be 280 houses.
I'm not the arithmetic person. On the low end of that, what is that? What do those numbers look like? So you got 1 acre.
So if it was a 10-acre site,
1
you'd have
acre.
1 acre for commercial development, which isn't bad, because commercial developments don't take up that much. I mean, the parking takes up a bit of land. But you could get a little strip of commercial development on 10, then you would have 2 acres for duplexes, apartment, townhome combos, so 2 acres times, so you could get like maybe 40 units on 2 acres, max. Again, you have to take into consideration the land taken up for the parking spaces, the detention pond, this, that, and the other. And then the remaining 7 acres would be about 28 houses.
Those would be single-family?
Single-family houses with the range, some could be quarter-acre lots, some could be 10,000 square foot lots. They could vary their product.
So-
Again, and this would all be approved through a planned unit development. That would be a requirement of this place type. Everything had to come in as a planned unit development. Because of the, this would give the city, with planned unit developments, it gives the city negotiation for design standards and added infrastructure and improvements they may need. Say, if a really large development came in, the city would be within the right to say, you have to designate so much land because we're gonna need a new school for this much density. Or you have to designate so much land over for a park. Another benefit to the city to use the planned unit development is it gives the public more notification and more input into the process as well, because an innate part of a planned unit development is it's a negotiation between the developer and the city/public for the density and the improvements, saying, okay, you can get up to 20 units per acre, but you have to give us X, Y, and Z. More sidewalks, you have to give us street lights, we want to control the architectural standards, we want you to connect the roadways into this area, you need to dedicate additional lands, like I said, for a new fire station, a new school. Those are kind of common negotiation points for these large mixed-use planned unit development projects.
What was the rationale behind adding these restrictive percentages?
So that there would be a certain level of predictability, both on the city side and on the developer side. Because with the language as broad as it was, it's common to have some sort of thresholds for mixed-use developments. The way it was currently written, if a developer came in and said, I want to do a planned unit development, and it says right here in your plan that I can do 20 units per acre, I want to build the entire project density at 20 units per acre. That's not the intent clearly of this mixed-use development. That's not mixed use, that would be one use, 20 units per acre of all apartments or townhomes or, so in order
I'm wondering, for
to,
example, on the 20% duplex apartment, what would be wrong with going 30%?
you can certainly change it. These were just kind of numbers that the steering committee
I'd be
came
up
up
for
with.
30.
Well, I don't have any rationale for 30 either.
Okay, well.
Well, that's,
I'm just saying,
that's,
this is
I like
kind of what,
restriction
they were
now.
trying to think of in equations, so they were kind of going off the picture. Again, that's on page 56. They asked me, okay, we like the way that this is laid out, kind of what are those densities? I said about 10% of that looks commercial along the front with the dark red color, and then you can see all of the, these are all townhomes. I can tell that these are apartment buildings, townhomes, and then the rest is single family. So
So-
that's kind of,
I mean, that was kind of my, like, what was the basis of the 10 and 20, 10, but,
That-
and then
just to find some sort of
is that,
equation to make sure that you actually get a true mixed-use project.
I mean, to go back to a previous comment of letting the market decide, you know, to your example about out Wilson Avenue, it's not going to be feasible for them to develop 1,000, you know, they're not going to get any return on their, you know, they're not going to be able to rent out 1,000 apartments on Wilson Avenue, so they're not going to do that.
I would professionally argue that,
Well,
that given, if there, how do I say this? In my professional opinion, mixed-use developments like this would be appropriate in the designated areas, that some of these areas go all the way to the outskirts of town in your established single-family neighborhoods, but purely a 20-acre apartment complex development on the very edge of town, I don't think would be appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. But, you know, the basis of those numbers, is that accurate? Like, can we go back to the
You
Walker?
can tweak them.
Can we go back to the Walker Collective and be like, hey, what is the ideal development? What is other cities seeing in this development zoning? And kind of have some kind of like basis for those numbers.
Could we express that as a typical numbers rather than maximum numbers?
Yes.
What
I
I'm
don't,
trying to do is
going,
avoid having to do too many variances as a various development comes in, and that's not what he wants to do. He wants to do a little different from that,
Yeah.
so you gotta do a variance.
we could say typical instead of maximum.
I think a range might be more appropriate even.
That's fine.
Somewhere
Typical would
between.
allow
Just
that, I think.
something to
Typical,
create some
yeah.
sort of parameter, so it's clear
Yeah.
that this is intended to, you have to have a little bit of all of these uses. And the overwhelming majority is supposed to be single-family residential still.
Yeah. So I mean, you can say, you know, somewhere between 50 and 70% residential, somewhere between
Typical.
10 and 20% commercial, and you know, something like that.
Right. As far as going back to the Walker Collaborative, we could certainly ask them, but they're about at the end of their contract. The only thing that we have left to do for them on their contract is to give them the red line, they make the edits, and they're done. I will say that, for what it's worth, professionally, these types of mixed-use development, I probably have reviewed and approved at least, say, 50 of these.
Okay.
These are a huge component of the development in Florida, where I worked for like over 12 years. I'd review one of these every 2 months.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
and
they're
I'm
very
saying
popular.
these percentages are about right.
Yeah, I just don't wanna be overly restricted and have to grant a lot of variances because they don't
Right.
exactly comply.
Right. But like I said, I think it behooves the city as well as the developers to have some sort of level of predictability.
Is this the orange and the polka dot, or just?
Yes.
So basically, everything that's left to develop becomes this with the restrictions?
That's what the
I don't like that at all.
the
So
possibility.
if I had already owned property and maybe planned on waiting until construction costs go down before I build, and I bought this property with that in mind, then we come along and change this, and now you're telling me I can't build what I wanted to build?
If you're a polka dot, you can do this. You can elect to do it. If
If
you're
you're
an
orange,
orange,
you
you
have
have
to?
to do it. So if you're in the light orange, there's only a few properties. There's the Anderson Farm, there's the property that is south of Ham, north of Silver Street, there's the Prince Farm, and then there's properties down by the ball field. So the light orange color is in this category. If it is polka dot, they can develop under the low-density residential, which is your R1 now, just a regular old subdivision, or they could choose to do a mixed-use development.
Is that written in here? Like,
It says that,
I guess we haven't made it to that other one yet.
it's on page 55, no, it's on page 55, second column, eighth line from the bottom. For zoning purposes, this place type should also be treated as a floating zone, and that it may occur in additional locations that are designated suburban residential low when the site and development meets the criteria below. So that is creating your polka dots.
Okay.
So if I'm in orange,
Light orange.
I have to have minimum 10 acres, right,
Well,
to build, and I have to meet some sort of whatever range we
Yes.
arbitrarily decide is acceptable for me to build?
I wouldn't say arbitrarily, but
How do you
yes,
determine that?
you would be in this place type, yes.
How do you, if it's not how will we determine what the correct, what data will that percentage breakup be based on if it's not
Right.
arbitrary?
I guess I would have to, I can look at that further. I guess the percentages is based on my professional opinion, but we have not done a formal study on it. But I could certainly research that further and get back to you.
I would like to, I
Like
don't like this,
tomorrow.
I don't like that at all, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think it's good.
would
But
think-
at the same time, like, a range of what the development should look like would be helpful, I think, in that. Like,
Maybe talking to the people that actually own this property and get their feedback before we tell them what they're gonna do. I just don't, I don't like telling people what you're gonna do with your
Oh, that's that part.
property because 500 people out of 20,000 decided that they wanted to put mixed use on your property. I just don't, I don't like that.
I was thinking it would be allowable, but not mandatory.
yeah, maybe the SOR where they can
Yeah.
make it all optional, but, I mean, that's just.
You could certainly make it where, there is no orange and everything is polka dot, so it's just an option for everybody. Either you could develop your property under the existing low dense, I don't want to keep referring to the zoning district, but you could develop it under the low-density residential, which is basically 12,000 square foot lots, or you could have the option of doing the mixed-use development.
So what was the driving factor behind making this mandatory versus making it all optional to begin with?
It's just how the consultants brought it forward. We actually, I had, Mr. Brooks and I had discussion with the consultants. They originally just had only the areas in orange with the mixed-use development. We thought, well, that's only, if those are only, say, 5 isolated property owners that have these big, if none of those choose to develop, then nobody else can take advantage of this option. So it was through discussions with staff that the consultants kind of broadened the scope out and created the polka dot areas where more property owners took advantage of this option.
I would support
But the
making it
planning committee, you
optional.
can, again, this is your plan, you can certainly go the other way and just remove it,
If you make
the orange at all, and make everything make the orange areas polka dot, so it's just an option for everybody.
If you make it mandatory, and these landowners didn't like it, I would think they would take you to court and win.
And it would be a shame for them to even have to take us to court to, I mean, it's there, I understand the greater good of all, but at the same time, I would support the optional, make it optional. Because that gives them,
So no orange, just polka dot, yellow polka dot where there's currently orange, is that?
and maybe find a way to incentivize a mixed, however we do that, whether it's, I don't know, expedited permitting, or maybe find a way somehow to incentivize that mixed use in those designated areas, like we had talked about incentivizing some of the commercial districts.
I mean, just the presence of commercial and almost 20 units per acre, that in of itself is an incentive.
Well, I mean, not if I'm a builder, maybe.
If you're a builder, yeah. Because you can get that many more
A lot
rooftops
more
with
units
a
in.
limited amount of.
They're definitely incentivized just to get more units per
Instead of
acre.
getting 20 houses on a mile of new road, you could get, instead of getting, let me say it like this, instead of getting 20 rooftops on a mile of road that you just built, you could get 200 rooftops on a mile of road you just built. That's that much more profit.
So
So
if it's
developers,
optional, they'll do
generally,
it.
the incentive, they want more rooftops, as many rooftops as they can get.
Is this really, the orange on here, is it really holding anybody, the landowners accountable to this at all at this point? Like, are we gonna create a new zone for this? I mean, I realize that's probably putting the cart before the horse, but like, we're kind of, we're designating what we want these uses to be, not necessarily, we don't have stipulations on what, we don't have zoning restrictions yet on
No,
this, on
we
these
don't.
things.
But the zoning restrictions will be built off this plan.
Yes. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say about the optional stuff, even if we put everything as optional, we'd still at least need to nail down the ratios, right? So,
Well, I just don't want to see them nailed too tight.
well, have we put it to some form of ratio so we don't have
Right,
1,000 units on.
yeah.
Are there a range or typical? I like
Yeah,
typical, you know, it gives us a little
Equal one.
negotiation,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
But have it based off of something, some sort of data point, not just,
Okay.
Yeah, I do think that it should be data-driven decision for sure. I mean, just kind of what.
maybe our
the-
communities our size in our rural area, income levels, et cetera.
Mary, there is an extra property here that falls under that. It looks like from, it's the Country Club Apartments, I think is what it is. It's next to East Middle School, basically. Well, not really.
real close.
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's
South of
the end of
It's
Hogan,
currently-
the end of Hogan
yeah.
Street,
the end of Hogan Street.
the north end of Hogan Street, north,
Uh-huh.
north, like,
Yeah.
is that into the same thing?
Is that what?
Is that the same zone, the traditional neighborhood new?
Yeah, it's the orange, uh-huh.
Okay, I just didn't, the other ones are very clearly, they're a good chunk
Yeah,
of
it's all-
town, but,
it's- Yeah, that's all the orange.
okay.
Again, the consultants were trying to find large, undeveloped, or when I say undeveloped, it's not completely barren, it could have like one house, one or two houses on it, but large, undeveloped pieces of property in the city under single ownership. So a developer could come in and buy a big chunk of 50 acres from one party and do this development.
Understood.
I'll make a comment to this Anderson Farms. I mean, that's 160 acres. It's a pretty good
Yeah.
space. I mean, there's currently a developer that wants to turn that into this mixed-use scenario. And it's very similar to the ratios we've described.
The only
No.
difference is they don't have any commercial component, they just
Yeah,
have
that's true. No
townhomes
commercial.
and single-family.
Yeah, no commercial. That's true.
That would require, so we would require them to have commercial, not, and what if they couldn't find something commercial to go in there?
Just designate the space.
You just say, maybe someday a Starbucks will go here? And just leave it?
We can change it however you want. Do you want, you want to change it?
You start your own coffee shop right there.
My smoker's broke, I'd start a restaurant.
I mean,
I mean, that would be
typically,
kind of
if
my
you build-
question is,
Typically,
Then
if you
you've
build
gotta
that
f-
many units in that high of a density, that of itself creates your market for your commercial uses. That's usually how it works.
I mean,
I've
is there,
seen these
maybe,
projects
I mean,
go out in the
somebody's-
middle of nowhere. I mean, frankly, like beside the highway in cornfields, out literally in the middle of nowhere. And the residents themselves create the market for these little neighborhood serving uses.
yeah, I mean, one thing that may be probably not beneficial to developers would be to have some like common area green space kind of already budgeted in as well. That way it's just not rows of houses and looks like, you know.
That could
But-
also be a percentage you add. A certain percentage has to be green space.
I mean, I would like to see that. I mean, just to have a, you know, some kind of common area or something like that. I mean, if they have to put a retention pond in or something, or then they can, you know, they can kind of take advantage of that maybe. But,
or maybe like commercial or green space, but not, let's take 10% of it here, take 15% here, and then you can,
I would
I
be,
mean, I just hate this chopping out and,
I
what
would-
if, I mean, that is a question. What if they can't find something commercial? Are we saying that they have to have something commercial or just designate something commercial? Maybe something will be commercial here someday.
Right, it would be designated. They wouldn't have to start with that phase. They could certainly start with whatever phase they wanted to. They could start with the single-family residential phase. Then
what if they
do the-
just
and
stop?
do the commercial at the end. It just depends on the market.
Well, what if they just stopped at the,
Halfway mark.
yeah, they built the homes and they found out, hey, you know what? Nobody wants to build
It would just be
something
held,
commercial here.
it would just be held at that designation.
Okay.
But keep in mind,
Yes, sir.
look at the language, it says proposed maximum ratios.
10%.
So you could have anywhere from 0 up to 10. You could have anywhere from 0 up to 20% for your duplex apartments. So you, with that word
Yeah.
maximum in there, it takes care of the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
No, partially it does, but not completely.
Not completely.
if they're maximums, I think they're probably too low. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we want people to take advantage of
Yeah.
this, right? So we don't want to make it so,
I
such a pain in the rear end that they don't even want to bother with it.
agree.
Well, if
Otherwise,
Anderson,
they'll
if
just
Anderson
do
Farms,
R1 and,
if
Well,
Anderson
and to
Farms is
help
160 acres, I mean, 10% would be 16 acres for commercial. That's a lot of land. I mean, I'd hate to eat into their,
You don't have to have that much.
you
It's a
don't,
maximum.
I'm just
But
saying,
you can't,
right.
but you can't have any more than 16.
And also, gentlemen, just remember, like, none of this is the regulation, this is just the plan. So these are just the guiding principles too.
yeah, but you hate to stick
So-
something guiding in there and then come back later and say, when we're doing the plan, nah, we don't want to do that, otherwise.
No, I mean, but you
I mean, it's
would,
your
but I,
guide.
okay. I was just
Who
saying,
would
if we had a plan
determine-
development that came in and it was 11% commercial, I wouldn't say deny it. I would still recommend approval. It's still kind of in the same vein. Again, it's the guiding principle. These are kind of rough numbers. So like I said, even if it said a maximum 10%, if something came in with 11 or 12, I would say it still meets the intent of the plan. It's a planned unit development, we just keep moving forward.
Yeah, I
These aren't
mean,
regulations, these are just policy direction.
yeah, nominal or suggested ratios would be good, and then, I don't know if you need an absolute maximum or not, but
Okay. Well, we can come back to this
Okay.
topic like we're coming back to rule.
Your
We
idea
can
of the green
discuss it
space
tomorrow
as
night.
well.
I'll do some research on the percentages, and then if you want to further kind of think about tonight or tomorrow about eliminating the orange altogether and just leaving it as an option for certain properties that are 10 acres or larger and the low-density residential.
yeah. Just one other comment, and then we'll move on. But the, I did go to the, like, I guess the kickoff meeting of this, and I went to the Charette, that's it, okay. And that was a pretty common, like, people were asked to talk about, like, what neighborhoods they saw that they wanted to have in Tullahoma. And all the examples that were given were areas of this type. I realize that that wasn't probably represented well across the city, but there is a desire to have that here from citizens' comments. So,
My only comment to that would be is if somebody wants to see that, don't then go buy that property and build it yourself. Don't force it on other people, would be my only, use your money in your land. If you don't force what we want on other people, that would be my only.
If you give them the option, they're
Then
going to
you
make
make
more
it
profit
optional.
by
They
building
can
more
do-
units. So,
Unless they don't have the money to build that many units.
yeah.
I'm speaking about that from a perspective of attracting people to live in Tullahoma, not necessarily. I don't expect someone to move to Tullahoma and be like, oh, I'm going to buy this 10 acres and make it a mixed use so I can live there.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, let's move on. I'm done.
Okay, we'll come back to that one. Is that okay? Do you want to keep going
Yeah,
on
keep
this
going.
topic or move on? Moving on, okay. Whew. Page 58 is just pictures. Oh, okay, here. We're almost done with this part. Special areas. So these are all just your leftover kind of miscellaneous areas. This is your airport, industrial areas, civic uses, institutional uses. One specific area that I wanted to draw to your attention, as the mayor said about 2 hours ago about the airport, there is concern from the airport for several years now about the encroachment of residential areas close to their boundaries. So the airport zone is extending out onto, currently the airport zone is just airport property. Now it's extending onto private property that surrounds the airport, and the allowable uses would be office, different types of office uses, and industrial uses. The steering committee also added in commercial uses are an option around the airport. Primarily, the only use that you could not do on private property directly surrounding the airport in the light blue color on your place type maps would be residential. Whatever residential development that is currently in the blue area is vested. Anything that's already gotten subdivision approval that's in the blue area or zoning approval in the blue area is vested.
Is what?
Vested, which means that they have the legal right to proceed. So we've rezoned property to R3 on Ledford Mill Road. We approved a 100-lot Lakes subdivision last year on Ledford Mill Road. Those are vested, those can proceed and develop. There is a 20-acre vacant piece of property on Ledford Mill Road that is in the blue designated area. It can develop as airport support uses, office, commercial, or industrial, basically anything but residential. Again, to try to coordinate with the strong concerns, I'll say, that the airport authority has with encroaching residential development close to their boundary.
So somebody.
There are also, I'm so sorry, Daniel. Also, keep in mind, as we just reviewed all the place types, there are huge areas of the city to do residential developments. Primarily, this and industrial areas and the office park are the only areas in the city where you can't do residential. You can do residential in any of the urban or suburban residential place types, as well as all the commercial place types.
I don't know who owns that, but if there's a lot of residential going on out there, so somebody bought it with that intent, what you're saying is, as long as they get it rezoned prior to us changing it, then they can continue to build residential there if they wanted to.
Correct.
So they just
Until
need
this-
to, they just need to
until
beat
this
us to
plan
the
is
gun.
adopted, the current plan and the current zoning is in place. Yep.
Are the ones we just rezoned, are those like right on the edge of the blue, or is it, or will it create like an island?
Anything north, yeah.
Like I just know if the blue would wrap around the,
No, the blue will still stay in place. It would become, we would leave it, how do I explain
I'm
this?
sorry. Oh,
We would leave it in the blue category for the place types map, but when we did the zoning map, we would zone it to make it conforming to acknowledge their vested rights.
but I just didn't know if it was gonna be like
But if-
on the other side, like.
But if for some reason in
Yeah.
10 years, okay, so, again, we're kind of going down a weird rabbit hole, but say we just rezoned a large piece of property to R3 for townhomes. He has the vested right to develop under the R3 zoning district, we'll rezone him R3. Say in 10 years from now, that project never took off and he wants to rezone the property, then we would look at the place type map saying you're in the airport zone, you can only rezone to one of the office, commercial, or industrial land use categories. That's when it would like kick in.
Yeah, that,
That's the easiest way I know how to explain it.
yeah, if they don't develop what's already on the books, basically.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if it's worth anything, but I would almost like to see those properties designated from a different color. As like, have your airport as being airport, and then have another type of, the airport, near airport use, something like that, so there's a distinction between what is actually the airport and what's not. But, I mean, I know because I live here, but
I just think anything north of Ledford Mill should not be airport. Not be affiliated with the airport. I'm just looking at the runways. I mean,
I mean, I go back to if they
Yeah.
want to use it for something, then they need to buy it.
well, it's, it's owned now, right?
Well, I mean,
It's
the
owned.
properties around it. If they want to keep it from being residential, then they need to buy that property.
Okay, I got you.
Would be my,
Because, the airport is owned by the city, right? But everything north of that is just individual plots that are privately owned and either recently rezoned R3 or whatever, or are people are living on those lots.
Yeah, they're either R1,
There's- We've approved,
that one
we've
thing
approved
R3
subdivisions.
or agricultural.
Yeah. So I don't know why anything, I understand the airport's comments, they come every time we want to rezone something out there. But we also, it's been said before, we have a lot of citizens living right next to the railroad track. That's a lot louder and a lot more frequent than airplane traffic out there. I just don't see anything, I don't see why anything north of Ledford Mill needs to be affiliated with the airport.
I agree.
I think it'd be cool to live next to an airport. I don't, but I don't want to live next to a railroad track, but
My brother bought a $500,000 home right by the airport in Shelbyville. So they sit out, drink coffee, and watch the airplane. They love it.
or we'll try to talk into the microphone and look at this at the same time. Is it something that we should say? The only reason why we didn't zone that is basically, I guess suburban
I
corridors.
will specify, it says, in fact, uses that might be uses that might be negatively impacted by air traffic noise, particularly housing, should be discouraged in the vicinity of the airport. So residential development isn't prohibited, but it's discouraged.
But you did say earlier that this would allow you to build everything except residential.
Right, but again, we haven't gotten to the zoning stage yet. But that's the intent. Long story short, that's the intent of the airport zone, is to expand. The airport zone is no longer just the airport boundaries, to further regulate the periphery of the airport, to reduce residential encroachment.
Why would we not just turn it into, the suburban core with essentially a commercial zoning area? I don't want to, if they didn't use zone, I don't know what the corresponding one would be, but why don't we just extend the pink down there, encourage it to be?
Because that would, right now, the airport zone is pretty broad. The only thing that it doesn't encourage is residential. So right now, in all that area, you could do any type of office, any type of commercial, any type of industrial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that include the I-2? Would that include I-2?
Yeah. I mean, this plan gets away from I-1 and I-2.
I realize
basically
that, but
just
it's
I.
like, can we
Right,
make,
but yeah,
glue
it's-
there
it's
next
office,
to?
retail, commercial, industrial,
Yeah,
basically just, it's discouraging residential. I don't know.
But there's already going to be residential there. I would,
Can we just leave it?
Further residential.
yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing I don't like about that, I think, is that we already do have existing homes going out there, and if we're going to say that we can put industrial right next to them, that's an issue.
What, I'm sorry,
We have existing homes that are going to be vested, have vested right to that zone from what they've already approved. But if we're going to say that you can do industrial out here too, and we can put like I don't know, some egregious industrial process right next to the residential, I mean, that's an issue too. We need to make sure that we kind of discourage that, because there is going to be
Correct.
residential out there. So I would almost say scrap the industrial, at least I-2. But
I'd say just leave it.
you started it.
Leave it blue and rezone.
No, leave it how it is. Whatever it is right now, just leave it. Maybe make the polka dots.
Bring the polka dots all the way up to Ledford Mill.
Yeah.
Like to
Leave
the
the
north side?
airport boundary where the airport boundary currently is in real life, not on this map.
Because there's some right here. And like,
And just, I mean, it's nothing against, I understand the airport's concern, but I also don't want to go through and rezone property because the airport doesn't want residential around there. I would like if we could do the neighborhood behind me is nothing. So I don't get to customize the map to my liking.
Well, we've already got R1 and R3 right there that we're talking about. It's already zoned, R1 and R3. That's the only, so I don't think there's any industrial going there, because it's already zoned R1 and R2, R1 and R3. So it's pretty well covered.
Unless we change it
Next
to
to it.
blue.
We're saying we can do industrial.
Next to it, where?
If it's airport, that's under the new, place types, we can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, where on this map are you talking about?
Well, since I'm colorblind, I can't tell you.
Does it work?
Well,
Well, but that's been difficult, man.
Ray, on the north side of Ledford Mill, we just rezoned a good chunk of stuff to be, I think, R1.
Yeah, it's
is one
R1 and
subdivision,
R3. I
R3 is
mean,
another.
remember, as these properties come in to rezone and develop, you also have to take into consideration the existing development pattern of the
Yeah.
area.
And then, but the lot next to it, I don't know what it's zoned, but, if what we're trying to do is encourage, industry out this way that's supportive of the airport, and I know that we already told the developer basically that kind of buyer beware on the airport noise, but, we can't go and put some kind of like large industrial factory next to them
The only
either.
other property there on that side of the road is an agricultural.
Yeah,
There's one
not
tract
much
that's
land.
zoned agricultural.
but we're talking about rezoning it.
Yeah.
so it's like,
Maybe not, we're not talking about rezoning it now, but we're talking about putting it
Airport
into
special.
a zone of this airport special kind of thing that would permit them to have, whatever they want, except for residential,
down here.
right?
Not exactly.
Okay. If I'm not right, then just tell me and I'll shut up.
No,
but-
it's fine. I mean, if they couldn't put whatever they wanted in, you still have to take into context the existing development pattern. It would not be appropriate to have a townhome development next door to, or have industrial use next door to the Lake single-family neighborhood.
I
You
agree.
still have to take into context. I would certainly say that there would be parameters for the industrial uses that we could build into, once we get to the zoning portion of the airport districts, saying compatibility with surrounding area and that type of language. Again, we're just kind of doing broad strokes at this point.
I would say either make it polka dot or, is that fuchsia?
Suburban corridor.
Suburban, yeah. Everything north of Ledford Mill, and get it out of the blue. Whatever accommodates. Mixed use would be great there. If they had the option to do a mixed use where there's commercial, that'd be nice by the airport. If somebody wanted to do a plan, that would be mine, it's just, I don't like the blue.
Most of that area north of Ledford Mill right now is residential.
Yeah.
So we just make the extra 20% that's not,
Just go ahead and make it
Yeah.
that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Mary, you don't seem pleased with that position.
No, it's your
Okay, all right.
decisions.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Everything north side, I know there's one, Ascend's got something going on out there, I don't know what it is, but
The call center,
it's a call center.
yeah, and then,
It's
isn't there like a
the-
dog
it's
place out
the-
there as well?
It's the wetland, the bridge, the wetland,
Old skating rink.
the
Ro-
s-
skating
the old
rink.
skating rink, which is now the Bounce House Arcade, Ascend, Howard's Duplex Townhomes, Tullahoma Kennel Club, Farm, the Lakes.
You may have been out there more than me,
So
Mary.
mixed use seems to make the most sense.
So whatever that's changing to, will they be able to fit into whatever that is? Like Ascend and everybody else?
I think,
Okay, whatever that.
I mean, that's just all
change it to,
mixed,
but-
it's all non-residential mixed, I mean, that's just all mixed use at this
Okay.
point.
I
You
mean,
got a little
there
bit
is
of
some,
everything.
there is some stuff on the, I guess it's 130, that we're doing the same thing to, right? Is it the same argument out that way? I mean, this is already
There's a lot of
Beechcraft.
homes already.
No,
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, that's
It's
all.
Beechcraft Farm,
I think
Parish
that's already all
Property,
developed.
Chandrell subdivision. Chandrell subdivision is an airport related
Yeah.
use.
Does the city limits not go? I thought we,
No, it's still-
I thought we had a,
That's
a good
that's
chunk of-
Cumberland Springs, or whatever, yeah, that's Moore County.
I know, well, I thought there was a bunch of stuff down the way farther, but maybe I'm thinking otherwise. Anyway, the streetlights go pretty far down there, though.
They do.
All right, what are our thoughts on that, gentlemen? Change the boundary on Ledford Mill, yes, no?
Polka dot, north of Ledford Mill.
Polka dot.
Polka dot,
So you're,
You've already
Mixed
got.
use.
you've
so
already
polka
got-
dot, you're not only, so it's not just R1, now you're increasing the residential density up to 20 units per acre there.
Well, whatever they can do to
It's a-
where they could do the commercial or the residential if they wanted to. Because it would be nice to be able to say, that'd be a great place to have a coffee shop and some homes and some apartments for people who
Can
use
we-
the airport.
Can we leave it at this? Realize that there's an issue. When we get to zoning, we can talk about what the zone needs to be.
My only thing would be, this is the guiding document, right? So if
Yeah,
we're
you
looking
need
at
to
it
make it
blue,
so.
then
Yeah.
we're gonna adjust zoning based off of that
Well,
color.
I think there is some special exceptions that we may want to put there. I mean, we can even just put like a buyer beware clause on it there.
We could do that in the zoning if we made it.
Yeah.
Which we do right now currently with, if somebody rezones, we tell them,
For that property, though, you've already got mixed use there. It's already, doesn't fit the exact use for polka dots, since you've got mixed use out there.
But no residential.
It's already residential.
it's already been zoned
It's all
and
residential.
subdivision
It's
approved.
all residential through here.
that's what it
That's
currently
residential.
is, but if she's
Current
proposing to
it's
change.
currently residential, only 40 dwelling
It's
units per
already,
acre.
already rezoned residential.
But if it's polka dot, then you.
If it's polka dot, then
Just
you
coffee
can,
shop or whatever.
so beyond,
Has to
I'm just
stay
being,
that way.
trying to be
It's already
transparent,
zoned that way.
because I have
You
met
can't
with the
change it
Aviation Authority.
If they're already
So
developing it.
there'll be significant concerns from them with that
We've already
change.
got plats out for development.
Because not only are you,
But
you're allowing the existing residential development, now you're actually incentivizing more dense residential development on
Then
that
they need
area,
to
if you
buy
do
that
polka
property.
dots.
If they want to
If you
prevent
leave it
that,
like
then they
that.
need to buy that property.
It's the same.
Or we.
Again, I'm not, this isn't my opinion, I'm just,
Yeah, and I don't mean it
I'm just,
towards.
no, I just want to make sure I'm clear. There's been a lot of concern, so I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. That if it's polka dot, now you're actually encouraging more rooftops in that area.
I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about people wanting to build homes out there. And that's why people have bought land to do so. So I hate to come in and,
Well, remember, we're not changing what they can do that's already been approved.
what they
And-
currently, but the ones who haven't already, maybe they purchased the land, they're sitting on it,
Yeah.
and they just haven't brought it through yet, would be the concern.
You said anybody with a current R1 or 2 or 3 or whatever is out there, they're good.
What I'm saying,
Well, I mean, for now, unless they change.
if they have an approved plat,
Okay.
they're vested. If they have an approved rezoning,
They're not.
they are vested. So primarily, it's the R3, and like the R3.
I don't know the property, but
Because he's
they-
about to submit for permits.
So if one person had an R1 out there, I don't know if they do or not, but
So the rest of the properties that's
That-
undeveloped is R1 or ag now. So they're farms or miscellaneous single-family lots.
so they could they build a house in a year from now if they wanted to, or is that?
That would be something that we'd have to work through within the zoning code.
Okay.
Because if they had,
So I was just thinking, like, say I bought this one tract of land
or
out
you
there.
have an existing house out there on 4 acres.
Yeah.
That house, I guess, on black and white, it would become non-conforming because residential development wouldn't be allowed. But I think the intent is further residential subdivision
Okay.
is discouraged from the airport standpoint. I don't think that they have any issue with existing residential landowners developing with like one house per
Lot or-
their acreage,
Okay.
whatever they have out there now.
Okay,
But I
that's
think
what-
it's, they're trying to reduce the subdivisions going in the large developments going in.
I understand their concern, I do. But we also are not making special zoning places for anybody else who has concerns about what goes in back behind them. So I don't see the argument of we need to change this because they want to discourage as a valid argument, because that would open it up. Maybe Greg wants to change back here to agriculture because he wanted to discourage, nobody else is getting that courtesy. To me, that's just not a bad argument. We can come back to it, but I would say leave it, make it mixed. If somebody wants to put commercial, they can do that with the PUD thing, but don't zone, just, if you want to control what goes somewhere, buy it.
Do we have consensus on that one?
Well, I just want to say I do have a lot of respect for I've listened to the airport. I listened to the airport when they wanted to keep that commercial. I ultimately voted residential against their wishes. But I respected their wishes and said they can get it put into the restrictive covenants that they're putting in out there to don't call the airport for making noise. So I'd like to continue to respect their desires to that extent and to keep that as we have it. And I don't think it's making a special concession to them to avoid doing something that we're not already doing. So that would be my input.
I agree with that.
I agree, really. I'm indifferent. I mean, I get when the Army or whoever's doing drills at midnight or whatever between here and Arnold, I get an undue amount of helicopter noise at my house, but it's kind of interesting. It's
It's cool. Yeah.
I think that was consensus.
I think we have to
So
get-
the consensus is, I'm trying to make sure I'm clear. So the consensus is we remove the area north of Leckford Mill and remove it from the blue and make it yellow polka dot.
But would the yellow polka dot fit in that though? With the, like, would it allow a sin to be there? And
Wilson is already there.
No,
well, I mean, I get that, but I mean, like,
Would
say
that-
a sin wanted to put another building right beside it or
It's
behind it. Or,
mostly residential now, based on
Yeah.
what we've already done. You know, and approved zoning and subdivision lots.
Yeah.
So it's only another 30% that we're saying take it on to
we
the
could
mixed use.
refer, yeah, we could just leave it blue for Ascend and
Yeah.
Okay.
the rank
That's fine.
and the thing, and then just remove it from the Kennel Club over.
Yeah, yeah. And if they wanted to come back in and do something industrial or like an Ascend, and then they could. They could ask for a rezoning because you've got Ascend right there, right next to it,
Okay.
if there were a market for that. And there's lots of land south of Ledgeford Mill where we can continue with the industrial development off of that new taxiway road, you know, down there. I mean, that was that 200 acres that we had figured out a while back.
They put some huge hangars up there recently.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the industrial lands? I mean, one good thing is there's quite a bit more industrial lands designated under this place type than under the current zoning or land use designation. So all the area that's along Mitchell and Mandel, all that whole area, Anderson, that whole area now is primarily commercial with a bunch of non-conforming manufacturer industrial uses. So now we're going to make it actually an industrial place type and probably an industrial land use or zoning district.
We call that an
One
industrial
change I did
corridor.
have that I recommended doing is that on the place types map, along Anderson, you know where the bowling alley is and Russell Barnett dealership, and then there's like an antique store, kind of that area, that section of Anderson, they have as industrial, recommending changing it to, I can't remember which one, SC, Suburban Corridor, the Suburban Commercial Corridor, to vest all those uses. Okay. All right, well, that's it for the place type section.
Good work, Mary.
Thank you.
All right.
We have 1 more hour to go. It's okay. This was the hard part.
Deans are out of here.
Oh,
Thanks for coming by.
mobility.
Good night.
That was the hard part. That honestly was, that's the hard section.
Mary,
Are we powering through?
one quick question.
Yes, sir.
What does SRL stand for? It's traditional neighborhoods, new, SRL optional?
It's a mistake. I've already caught it.
Okay.
It was, as they were working on it was a concept that changed.
Is it supposed to be
It's not
traditional new
supposed to be-
neighborhood?
It's suburban residential, it's the polka dots.
No, I know that, but it's like,
It should be under suburban, it shouldn't be under urban.
okay.
Long story short, it's just, the nomenclature got muddied a
I
little
just didn't
bit.
know what, I couldn't make out what.
Suburban
the-
residential low,
Okay.
under the traditional neighborhood new we're clarifying it, we're simplifying it.
Just go away.
Okay, mobility. So mobility section, page 60. This is all of your transportation, your road networks, your sidewalks, your bike paths, your greenways, etc. Again, keep in mind any comments that you've received from the public as you're kind of going along through this section. There were just some miscellaneous typos corrected on page 60. Page 61 is the map of the designated place, road names. I will say that a lot of most of the mobility section comes from the adopted transportation plan, as well as the recently approved Manchester Tullahoma mobility plans. So basically, the consultants took those two existing plans, morphed them together, found their commonalities, and put it in this plan of things to work on from those plans over the next 20 years with some tweaks. So page 62, lay out your different roadway types. Your roadway, rural parkway is basically State Road 55. This ideally is how it would be developed, with street trees, 4 lanes, shoulders, and a landscape median. And again, a lot of this mobility section are things that the city would go after grants from various entities, including TDOT, to do roadway improvements to implement these measures in reality.
When you say State Road 55, we don't have much control over, or any control over the design there, right? I mean, I guess it
Yeah, we
currently
do.
already has the landscape median.
It's a TDOT road, but we can certainly request a grant from TDOT to do these improvements, and we would do a match.
And we're talking about State Route 55 eastbound towards Manchester. I know that it's supposed to be
East or west?
north-south, but it's eastbound. Westbound is 2 lane. Are we?
It's between, from the end of Carroll to Manchester.
Okay.
That, yeah. It basically looks like this now. I think we just are lacking a little bit of the shoulder. Rural suburban roads, this is basically like your Ledford Mill Road. Another component with the mobility plan, once this plan is adopted, any developments along these areas may have to dedicate this additional right-of-way to implement these improvements. So along Ledford Mill Road, this plan is calling for a 60-foot right-of-way, which is also in the existing transportation plan. There are sections of Ledford Mill Road now that are only like 40-foot right-of-way. So the developers would have to come in and dedicate an additional portion of that required right-of-way. And then as it's developed, say, in lieu of putting in a sidewalk on their side, we would have them put in their section of the side path that is shown on this plan. And again, being in a plan helps the possibility of future funding sources. If we could go to TDOT or say Rural Bikeways of America, they had some sort of a grant, we could say, look, it's in our comprehensive plan, the public wants this as a supporting argument for a grant award.
Manchester got $1 million for sidewalks.
Mhm.
That mobility plan.
Yep. I will say, from the public standpoint, beyond jobs, housing, anything that was sidewalks was the #1 issue in Tullahoma, even above drainage. So, Suburban Avenue, I'm flipping through these quickly, 63 Suburban Avenues. Again, this is a 100-foot wide right-of-way with, we don't really have any local examples of this, but if this was for a new development. Suburban Streets, this is basically West Side Drive, where you've got a 60-foot right-of-way with 2 lanes, sidewalk, and a bike lanes. So you've got 2 lanes, a buffer, bike lane, curb and gutter, planting strip, and a sidewalk. That's how West Side Lane could look. West Side Lane being from Lincoln down all the way to the city limits, within their existing 60-foot right-of-way. Suburban, local suburban street new. This is your suburban residential sidewalk, sorry, my brain's going. Street profile. The steering committee removed sidewalks from one side of the street. That's the current regulation.
What's an example street?
I'm sorry,
What's an example street of the local suburban street new?
any,
Like where would we put
any
that?
road in Macon Manor, Terra Estates, any neighborhood street. So if a new residential development came in on the Kennedy Farm between Macon Manor and, I can't remember the one to the north, the developers, the plan would say you have to put sidewalks on both sides of the street, of all your new streets. the steering committee said to reduce it, you only have to put sidewalks on one side of your new residential streets in your subdivisions, which is what the current code reads.
New streets.
Yep.
Subdivisions.
New subdivision streets, sidewalks on one side. The
Okay.
plan had both sides, steering committee reduced it down to one side.
I will note that one 5-foot side, the pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, one 5-foot wide sidewalk is not bicycle accommodations.
Right.
I don't think they need to have bicycle accommodations other than riding in the travel lane. But
Yeah,
we
typically a
need to-
bicycle, a shared bicycle,
we,
a side path for bikes and sidewalks is usually 10 feet.
yeah, so I think we need to clarify that language. I don't think there necessarily needs to be bicycle accommodations in a neighborhood street. They can just ride with the same place the cars ride.
I think that's what it has. Where you seeing the bicycle?
Pedestrian and bicycle.
Yeah, it's the
Oh, I see.
pedestrian and
Okay.
bicycle accommodations.
I'll put a line through that.
Just make a pedestrian
Um,
accommodations. That's fine.
Good call. Okay, urban avenues, this is North and South Jackson. Again, these are both T-Dot roads. Basically, this almost looks like the existing profile it is now. You've got a center turn lane, 2 drive aisles. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. This is downtown, North and South Jackson, so in your downtown core. On-street parking, and then very wide sidewalks, 11.5-foot sidewalks.
So,
Mary,
And
how
these have
much,
all been
how much of
vetted.
that, how much of North and South Jackson does that cover?
I believe that it covers, let me go back to the map. I believe it covers your urban downtown core area.
Just the urban core. We do have on-street parallel parking in that urban core currently.
Right.
As we get outside that urban core, I'd sure like to discourage on-street parking.
Yeah. And it does. I believe that it goes down to the light blue color, which is your Suburban Avenue, which is on page, hold on. Yeah, which is on page 63, which does not have on-street parking.
Mary, a couple comments on the urban avenue. First off, back to the bicycle accommodations. We need to do what we can to discourage riding a bicycle on a sidewalk where we're going to have pedestrians, especially if we're going to have a happening downtown.
That would be police enforcement.
Well, but here it says pedestrians and bicycle accommodations, one 11-foot sidewalk bicycle accommodations need to be on the street.
I mean, I don't, because I don't think we want to police.
Oh, okay.
It'll
I
never,
gotcha.
Need to do.
I gotcha.
every day I come home from
Remove.
work, someone's parked on that sidewalk in front of your old building anyway. I don't even know why we even have to put enforcement.
I gotcha. Okay. Good, I didn't catch that, 'cause that's a good point.
So, and also, just kind of a philosophical thing is, and I know that we're not to the downtown part yet, but we're saying that we're going to have a 98-foot right-of-way for downtown,
Right.
and you're expecting a pedestrian, and your downtown goes on both sides of Jackson. So, I think one of the largest reasons why we don't have why there's not more downtown activity and stuff like that is because to get from the east side of Jackson to the west side and vice versa, your pedestrians have to walk 98 feet across 5 travel lanes of traffic moving upwards of 40 miles an hour. I realize the speed limit's 30, but I think I would like to see the urban avenue better designed such to eliminate that center left turn lane, create a pedestrian island for crossing, and give more emphasis to people over vehicles in that area. I realize that it's a state highway, people got to get through it, but creating a mobility plan, creating this plan is not, the goal is not to make sure that we don't back traffic up. The goal is to make sure that the people can live in the space that we're providing for them.
Do we have that much control control over Jackson?
We have a
No,
streetscape
I
coming
mean-
in, but yeah.
But that's on the streetscape will be on we own to the top of the sidewalk, right? But everything else
No.
is state?
No, I mean, the right-of-way starts at the edges of the buildings.
Yeah.
That's all right-of-way. We can have it in the plan to recommend, but ultimately it's TDOT's decision.
That's
Yeah.
what I meant, you're talking about. in the
But it would be
turn-
we could
turn lane
discuss
in
it
the
with
middle, right?
TDOT.
Yeah, get rid of that turn lane, allow the pedestrians to have some kind of
Add a
recourse.
landscape median I mean, you would have to have
Yeah.
a turn lane onto Grundy.
Yeah, you'd have to have turn
a
lanes,
lane
but you can
onto
also,
Lincoln.
You turn lanes.
That would ultimately be, we would just ask TDOT and they would say yes or no, right?
but
Yeah.
those features exist. Other cities do those features to make it a more walkable
Mm-hmm.
and sustainable downtown. Not so much just move cars through it.
Well, how many crosswalks do we have? Do you know, Mary, on North Jackson and downtown core, how many
3.
crosswalks?
2, 3, 4.
Grundy, Lincoln, Lauderdale,
Lauderdale.
Yeah.
3.
So, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
you can cross.
Crosswalks make it
Post
safe
office.
for a pedestrian.
Lincoln.
Oh, I don't,
I mean, right, I mean-
is
No,
there
they
light- No,
Well,
post office is
um,
Lauderdale.
Is that Lauderdale?
Yeah.
Safer than not having. one. I mean,
Lauderdale.
A lot safer. I mean, you've got
Lincoln.
a red light
Lincoln,
and you've got a
Grundy.
crosswalk.
That's it.
I guess that is.
You've got to go or stop.
That was something I
But-
saw a lot of in the plan, was people talking about re-engineering traffic on Jackson Street. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is it's not just as easy for us just to say, yeah, we can do that. That's ultimately the state's decision. There are a lot of cities, I think, that do that, but they don't have a state highway running through the middle of their town, their entire town.
Right, I mean,
I mean, it's something we could ask the state, right?
yes, it's something we can certainly ask the state, but the reality of it is that the state does have design guidelines they have to follow. As an example, and I'm not trying to be discreet, I'm just.
I'm not saying
my
the state's not the
sister-
problem.
My sister's actually a transportation planner, ironically. So, as an example, I don't know if this is true, but as an example, right here between Grundy and Lincoln, that distance, where it's FMO, City Hall, and Reminiscence, you've got a turn lane onto Lincoln, you've got 2 dual turn lanes. There's gonna be a distance for stacking in those turn lanes. So between the stacking distance to make a left onto Grundy for westbound traffic, and then to make an east on Lincoln from eastbound traffic, you might only have enough space for a landscape strip this wide.
Yeah.
So
and
I'm
we-
just saying, there's a lot of regulations and design standards through TDOT and all the state dots that you have to comply with. They're gonna say, well, you can cross right there. But we do go to a section, there are large expansions of North Jackson outside the urban area, in the suburban area, where there's a mile and a half before a crosswalk.
Yeah. I mean,
That's a different story.
That's outside of my, but I'm just talking
Right.
about to make downtown
More walkable.
palatable is to, traffic calming, so that
Traffic calming.
you're not competing with right turn vehicles. You have you don't have to worry about, I would argue that someone in a wheelchair, or someone that has, some kind of mobility impairment, stuff like that, can't cross that street in enough time before the crosswalk changes, or before the crosswalk changes. And I don't know that for sure, but I mean, there's, other places that are typically more pedestrian friendly, typically have a safe space to go to in the middle, so they can do half across and stuff like that, or have an island in the middle, things like that. I'm under the, I'll lose this to TDOT every time, but there's no reason it needs to be 5 lanes anyway. 2 lanes in a turn lane would be more than ample, and it would give it plenty of space for outside dining and things like that to happen on Jackson Street. And, that kind of stuff is, I think, needs to be, TDOT may not like it, but that doesn't mean we can't, we can put it in our plan and say, hey, this is what we desire.
Right, I hear you.
I would just want to make, we set expectations. When we do hear somebody say, we need to re-engineer Jackson Street, I would like to see, we set their expectations and let them know, this is 99%. My understanding is what they're doing on Wilson Avenue in 3 years. From reading the emails back and forth, we asked if we could have some input there, and they said, no. No, it's done deal, it's happening, and it's pretty much just, you're getting it, and this is what the design is gonna be. So I think just from the expectation point,
Right.
that would be my only thing is, you know, when we hear somebody say that, I say, yeah, I totally 100% agree with you, but that's pretty much out of our control.
Right.
Yeah, but it's something that I want, and I think,
Russian brick-in.
Okay, moving on.
I talked to him, he's my
65
neighbor.
urban streets, local urban streets, new development, there were no proposed changes. Page 6, we have 45 minutes, guys, we're almost there. 66, page 66, road improvements and connections. These are the general new designated roadway improvements. Again, this is pulled from the transportation plan and mobility plan. Cedar Lane improvements, complete a corridor study and implement plan, complete streets and streetscape improvements for Cedar Lane. William Northern Boulevard improvements. A lot of these projects the city is already currently working on, by the way. Eliminate Lakewood Place, William Northern Boulevard intersection and add sidewalks. William Avenue, Avoca Road, Railroad Crossing where feasible. Let's go to the map on this one because this threw some of the members of the public. Let me go. One moment, please. What this is saying, if we all look at the monitors, please. This is exploring the feasibility of putting a new road, extending Wilson Avenue,
Wilson Avenue.
generally through somewhere through the location of where Walgreens parking lot is. Hold on, I'm getting there. To connect through Brown Street and cross the tracks there.
So I saw
So
that.
it's right here. So this is Wilson Avenue, somehow make a connection through here to add another, and then there's already an existing cross street on Brown, which would ultimately funnel traffic from Avoca Road. So all the traffic on Riley Creek and Avoca Road that's funneling down Avoca Road, instead of having to go down to Hogan to cross the tracks, there would be another crossing at Brown Street that would tie directly into Wilson and get you out towards Lynchburg. So that's what that proposal is saying, investigate the feasibility of that. And then the Anderson Street improvements, implement complete streets for Anderson Street between, I believe, maybe Grundy all the way to Carroll. So those are your main roadway improvements.
That'd be awesome. Can you, on the map, there was a comment on number 2 there, the William Northern, and from, I don't have the comments in front of me, but from recollection, the comment left was something about that is Camp Forest or something like that. Can you, I believe that's a different,
You want to comment?
yeah. Just so we can clarify for them in case they're watching that this is not the area they're thinking of.
This is that
William-
area right here where
yeah.
northern comes
Yeah.
in. We call it the wishbone.
Yeah.
You'd be eliminating this section right here.
The comment was, William Northern Boulevard improvements do not eliminate Lakeway Place, William Northern Boulevard intersection. This is a historic road providing access to the Camp Forest Air Station and the barracks that once stood ground west of Cedar Lane. It goes on to say, incorporate a traffic circle roundabout in this location. This will improve traffic flow But that's I think the gist of what you were talking about was that first
Yeah, I
paragraph.
think maybe I just wanted you to show it, just to
Right.
kind of set them at ease that that's
What
not.
that means is looking at eliminating Lakeway just in this section from here to here, just this section, maybe straightening this out. So William Northern would come in right here, and then possibly, if, there would have to be a signal warrant study done, probably with the Cedar Lane study project that we have, we're about to begin, to eliminate. And then Cedar Lane would stay as Lakewood Place will probably stay this way because we still have to allow access to 7th Street here. So basically, it'd be eliminating this road bed here and probably straightening this out a little bit to make this a viable building lot. With this roadway
Yes,
gone.
let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get the
That would
money.
open that up.
Find the money.
Thank you. I had read that comment, and
It's
I
okay.
think that they had
Yeah.
not placed it properly.
And that's a project that's been apparently discussed for years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask about the feasibility thing for the Voco Wilson Lane thing?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that could even be possible in 20 years?
Of course.
Okay.
That could be possible in 1 year.
Okay. Or just the feasibility of it, or,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just, we already have a railroad crossing there on Brown Street. This is a vacant piece of property. Somehow, perhaps getting a right-of-way through the Walgreens parking lot or First Place, if this were to redevelop,
Okay.
this could be purchased and create a new road right there. This is already vacant.
Okay.
Are you
Just-
saying that the Brown Street crossing would be the railroad crossing?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be adding a new one, it would just be that?
No, it's already there, yeah. There's already an existing railroad crossing there. We wouldn't even have to deal with asking for another crossing. It would just be a way, like I said, a cleaner access to funnel all the traffic that's coming off of Oak Road, Riley Creek. You just come right down Brown, and you would just get right on Wilson and go out.
So theoretically, it would curve around Walgreens then? Like,
That was option
Theoretically.
one. Option
Okay.
two, Walgreens gets redeveloped. Option three, Walgreens gets torn down and moved, and the new road goes in, and Walgreens
okay.
goes to new location.
I wish they fixed their.
Yeah, I do too. I was thinking that same thing. It's all-
Option four with Fast Pace gets relocated,
Traffic flow.
or the new road goes through the middle of the parking lot, and we have parallel parking. I mean, there's a lot of different options the way it could work. Right now, it's just kind of a line on a map.
The reason I was asking is just because I think I remember there was that one on the old development map for like Fairview School Road that went across Creation, and I think you said it was like gonna be like $4 million or
Yes.
something. I
This
just want to make
is-
sure we didn't get in the same.
No, this is definitely a feasible project.
Okay.
Like I said, this property is already vacant, and this, really, you're just dealing with one or two landowners. There's no topographic reasons, this railroad crossing's already, this is definitely a feasible project, in my professional opinion. Okay, 67. Excuse me, intersection improvements. Like I just said, William Northern Boulevard, Cedar Lane, Wilson Avenue, Kings Lane and Country Club Drive, that came up a lot, that's a known intersection issue. And again, these are just doing
Yes.
studies on these intersections for potential improvements. Hogan Street at Northwest Atlantic Street, and then Anderson Street at Grundy Street. Proposed shoulder improvements, basically just adding shoulders to Marbury Road, East and West Lincoln Streets, Riley Creek Road, and then Country Club Drive, Short Springs Road. Increased connectivity. The rest of page 67 is discussing the option of trying to coordinate with the base to allow for truck traffic to go down, to exit I-24 and to go down the main, I'm sorry, I'm losing my
Wattendorf
concentration
Highway?
here.
Yeah.
AADC Highway or Wattendorf?
AADC Highway, yeah.
Wattendorf.
What, yes. Yes, to go down White. Right now, truck traffic is prohibited. It's kind of a missed opportunity for another truck ride directly into town if truck traffic was opened up. So that would be discussion with the base and through the Federal Highway Administration. So again, it's just exploring that opportunity as a guiding principle.
Well, one way to do it would be to get the the federal government to turn that highway maintenance over to the state.
Make it a truck route, yeah.
And they have wanted to do that in the past, the federal government, but the state turned it down. So the work would probably be to get the state to accept it.
Mm-hmm, yep. So that's that concept, coming back to revisit that issue. Increased connectivity, page 68. Let's try to finish the mobility section today if we can. That'll be really good headway. So
Yeah.
10 more pages. Connectivity in and around Tullahoma. As part of the planning process, residents have expressed a desire for greater mobility in and around Tullahoma. A few have noted the need for a bypass to circumvent the community altogether. The consultants found several components that they listed here on page 68 that found this an untenable proposal that they didn't further explore. I know in the past, I think several decades, there's been discussion and there've been some maps about a large bypass circumventing the entire city to move transportation around. The consultants looked at it and it was found, like I said, to be, for various reasons, cost of such a facility, the proposed alignments given our rugged terrain, and level of service, that they just found that option not realistic or tenable, as they said, over the next 20 years. Any discussion on that one?
I mean, my only real comment was is if there was, you know, if there was a bypass, that'd be excellent, really. But at the same time, like, one of the comments here from a citizen actually talked about finding a way to extend Route 55 down somehow south of the city, or I guess west of the city. I'm looking at it like this, west of the city, to kind of allow for some alleviation from some traffic down the downtown corridor of specifically speaking between Wilson and Carroll. To me, that was like a reasonable thing. I mean, I realize there's a lot of houses in the way, but there's nothing that, something similar to that would help. I think would help downtown get some of that traffic off of Jackson Street and help downtown kind of be a little bit more, like I said earlier, palatable. But yeah.
But there's a lot of houses in the way.
There's a lot of houses in the way.
Yeah.
Well, no, but you could come out this way and come, have something.
Yeah,
And again, remember that this is a 20-year plan, and I will say that there's been a lot of discussion. As an example, the Cedar Lane improvements, which is in this plan, I read the City of Tullahoma plan from the 1980s, and it was in that plan to widen Cedar Lane. So road projects take a very long time, unfortunately, to implement, and a great expense. But we can certainly add it if you want to add some new roadway improvements. But as far as the bypass around the entire city, that proposal wasn't included in this 20-year plan.
Yeah, I acknowledge that it's not for good reason.
Okay. Design standards for, page 68, design standards for roads. They explain what the purpose of cul-de-sacs, driveway, street width, sidewalk minimum width, street trees, bicycle and pedestrian mobility. They proposed on page 69, let me go back there, a sidewalk and pedestrian map. They showed existing bicycle and sidewalks, and then proposed, let me get there. The proposed bike lanes, paved shoulders, buffers, separated bike lanes, greenways, are all shown on page 69 as the dash marked. Again, most of these follow the existing mobility study and the city's transportation plan that have already been created. Extension of the greenways to the north and south, a bicycle, let me see, a greenway out Wilson Avenue towards Motlow, another greenway on Old Shelbyville Highway. There's been discussion about that towards Motlow to pick up the student traffic. Bike lanes down Turkey Creek Road, West Side Drive, Clements, Lincoln Street, neighborhood greenway along Jackson Street. Any discussion on the proposed greenways on 60 and bike paths?
Is from as someone that frequently rides their bike to get places in Tullahoma, I'm of my personal opinion that the bike infrastructure in Tullahoma is perfect right now. There's not a road in Tullahoma that I wouldn't ride on, with the exception of 55 towards Manchester, and with the exception of 55 towards, past the 130 split towards Lynchburg. However, bike lanes are often, I go to cities and stuff like this, and you can go to Manchester and you can look at their bike lanes that they just put in. You can go to Swanee and you can look at the bike lanes they put in. You can go to Demumbrium Street in Nashville and look at the bike lanes that they just put in. And they are all very substandard. And I do have concern about us just willy-nilly throwing bike lanes on these places with not enough money invested in them to make them actually to where they're actually safe, and they're not just an excuse to keep traffic moving faster. The areas that these bike lanes are proposed, there's no reason for traffic to be trying to move any faster than a bike anyway. That's just kind of my comment, is like, I'm very wary about encouraging bike lanes on some of these streets, with the exception of making it actually a more hostile environment for people like me that ride their bike places. Because if there's an excuse for me not to be in their way, they're going to take advantage of it. Them being drivers in a hurry, mostly minivan drivers, it seems.
Great. I could. Since we've had this study done, I've been paying particular attention to issues like mobility in other cities I happen to be going through. Recently been going a fair amount more of that. And have been paying attention to bike lanes. And they seem to, if anything, create a hazard. Doesn't do anything to add to safety. Today, I took the opportunity to look at a planned city, Florida. I've spoken to you about it, Mary. In Florida, 40 years ago, they were building a celebration city just west of Orlando. A brownfield site. They had planned city from the ground up. Everything was planned. I went in today and looked at all the streets in Celebration City. There's not a single bike lane in Celebration City. So bike lanes sometimes do not add to safety for bikers or to pedestrians. So I don't see adding bike lanes in Tullahoma, to your point, of doing much to improve safety for bikers or for traffic.
I mean, I do think that there is some advantage to have for safety, especially if there are the buffered bike lanes or separated bike lanes. But even those, if it's not planned properly, and it's often not, there is a conflict at every intersection that you come to, and that's and the people that I ride bikes with that have been hit by cars, almost always from a turning vehicle with a conflict. They don't get rear-ended. They don't get head-on collisions. They get turned into because they're moving faster than the car perceives them, and the bike lane just creates an additional an additional way for them to be ignored by someone operating an automobile, and they'll get sideswiped.
And what is particularly hazardous is to have parallel parking alongside a bike lane
Right.
and car doors opening either into a bicycle or into a cars. So bike lanes, again, I don't know if we're ready for that in Tullahoma.
I just-
When I was in San Antonio, lived in the downtown area and rode my bike. You almost gotta ride your bike
That's good.
everywhere. And the buffered bike lanes, the separated bike lanes, the multi-use path, especially in the form of their greenway system, was great. I see a lot of people say we don't need to spend money on greenways, but a greenway is really just a sidewalk when you kind of, with trees and stuff. But I like the interconnectivity of the downtown. But you rarely saw just the standard bike lane, and I wouldn't drive one of those
No.
if I did. But I do lean towards. I like the buffered. I like the separated. I like the multi-use, but I just don't see that in most parts
So,
of Tullahoma.
so the buffered separated bike lanes are okay, the greenway is okay, right?
Yeah.
But the proposed bike lane paved shoulder is the issue?
I take
I
issue with
wouldn't
that, yeah.
waste money,
It's a place for people to park their cars in Swanee. It's a place for people to put their trash cans in Manchester.
And just not
It's,
paying attention. There's just
and
not
it's-
enough room.
and if you don't have the maintenance to go with it, to sweep them off about weekly or something like that, it's a good place for you to get a flat tire on a bicycle.
Okay.
Um,
All right, that makes sense. Okay. Sidewalks. The steering committee and myself and Butch Taylor, the public works director, and the city engineer, we all look very closely at the proposed sidewalks and greenway extensions to make sure that they made sense. The steering committee didn't have any edits to the map of proposed sidewalks and greenways.
The
I think the Greenway plan is the Greenway plan that we've had for quite a while, the extension and the loop and the connections. And then the I remembered. The sidewalks, again, are trying to create, connect locations. One thing that the steering committee didn't change, I think we briefly touched on it, but there was no consensus, is the idea of requiring sidewalks within certain distance of schools. I know that this was a previous policy or direction, like there should be a sidewalk on all streets within a mile of all schools, or you could say there should be a sidewalk on all existing streets within a half a mile of all elementary schools, something to address beyond. I'm sorry, what I envision is that we would, based on this map, we would rewrite the subdivision and the zoning regulations saying sidewalks are only required on these roads or in new residential subdivisions on one side. However, this doesn't capture the issue about children walking to school. So then the question is, well, how far does a child typically walk to school, and should there be sidewalks? So that's what I'm bringing forward to you.
So, I actually left a comment to that matter in the citizen comments, but I definitely like the idea of the sidewalks being within a mile of the schools. One of the reasons why I moved back to Tullahoma was because of the neighborhood schools, because because my kid could get to school without me helping him, and we have utilized that. But we chose a location that was very feasible, and I would like to make that more feasible for the other schools in town too. The 1 mile buffer is reasonable, I think. But I would change it to through streets within 1 mile. Because there's no reason, like,
So arterials or collectors? I mean,
I realize that that's not a good definition. Hang on. But what I'm saying is that like, I don't see Terra Estates is within a mile of a school zone or a mile of a school. I don't see a reason for there to be a sidewalk in Terra, but I do see there a reason to be a sidewalk on Country Club.
Right,
I do
which
see
is
there
on
reason.
Arterial.
I do see there reason to be a sidewalk on Forest.
Okay.
On any of, and draw a circle around east,
Like
draw a
the
circle.
main roads.
Yeah, and then I would like to take that a step farther and propose that we consider extending school zones into that same radius, so that the traffic down Forest Avenue is when Country Club is on a school zone, traffic on Forest Avenue is also at 15 miles an hour, so that you can't. The complaint that I see, and I'll throw my mother under the bus, but she used to drive us to school, and that was the bypass, so that we could go 45 plus probably through there. And I would like to see that kind of, and that I think that would go a long way to encourage parents' competence in being able to letting their child walk to school, ride their bike to school, stuff like that.
So a sidewalk on one side or both sides?
I would say both sides, but that's, case by case. It's kind of like it just depends. If there's only on one side, we need to make sure that there's safe places to cross, which means either crossing guards and or school zones.
So sidewalks within 1 mile of all schools on main roads with corresponding school zones on one side,
Yeah,
roughly.
I think that's fine. Something like that. Does that make sense? What I'm asking, like, it's
Yeah.
like
that makes
there is some roads between, and I'm thinking about between Robert E. Lee and East Middle School. Hood Drive, Pickett Drive, Forest Drive, Lane Street, and stuff like that, where that becomes a bypass for cars to avoid that school zone. But that's also the same path that those kids are walking to school. And I have the same situation. I know the city went and put up a little flashy light at Lincoln and Lincoln, Turkey Creek, and Westwood. But that's the same issue. That almost needs to be a school zone so that kids can get across that to get to West.
Makes sense. I understand.
It's my 2 cents on. I would really advocate hardly to try to make the city. We're very fortunate in Tullahoma to have neighborhood schools and to where kids can live next to the school and not get bused across the county or city or whatever to go to the school. And I think that we need to capitalize on that, because I think that was an attractive reason for me to come back to Tullahoma.
And I think it's for a lot of people. I hear that a lot around town, so.
I had heard you say, I think it's kind of a twofold, right? I think the city itself should, on our main roads, have sidewalks. I think within a mile is reasonable, because that's the distance, right? You're considered a walker. That's what state
A mile,
funding is
yeah.
Oh, is
based
that
off
okay?
of, is
I
a
didn't know that.
mile. And so I think that makes sense. But maybe some flexibility in developments. I heard you say before, sometimes it doesn't make sense to say you're going to put a sidewalk here. Maybe it's a path or a trail that leads to the city's main sidewalk, just instead of
Right.
maybe a way to get to the city's primary.
One thing that I would want you to recognize is that based on all the locations of the existing schools, they're all in established areas.
Yeah.
So around all the elementary schools, maybe not the middle schools and the high school, we're not going to see the developers aren't going to be paying for the sidewalks. They're going to be city-installed sidewalks.
And
Because
another,
they're already built out around all of them.
an idea that one of the developers, and they probably shared with you, is there are some areas out where we may have them put a sidewalk that maybe sometimes doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It
There's
does
no connection
sometimes.
somewhere. Right.
It does sometimes, like, because Manchester did that, and people thought, well, why in the world are you making? Well, they got $1 million grant, and now they're connecting all those sidewalks. But sometimes it doesn't make sense, so maybe we look at something, hey, instead of us making you put this sidewalk here where it doesn't make sense, that goes into the city's sidewalk fund, and the city uses that money to put the sidewalk where a sidewalk needs to go to kind of help out with
Right.
some of that. That's probably outside of,
No, that's something that you could certainly establish, and that's something that's been discussed. When I worked for the city of Tampa, they had a sidewalk trust fund where in lieu of installing sidewalks in certain locations, if it's not feasible due to like terrain or topography or a lack of anticipated connectivity, you could put the money based on that daily rate of construction cost for linear foot of sidewalk into the sidewalk trust fund to be used in that same quadrant of the city.
yeah.
So that $20,000, if you did a development in Robert E. Lee School District, then it would pay for the sidewalks in that sub-area, so
That would help
Okay.
us out.
it's definitely something we can explore. Let me check
Is-
that
is-
sidewalk trust fund. I think it's, I can't remember if it's in here or not.
There,
I'll-
there's not enough resolution on this map, Mary, or at least I can't tell. But are we talking about putting a sidewalk down Grundy Street over here past the police station, where it currently goes into
Are we talking
gravel?
about putting a site, yes,
Okay, perfect.
down the hill. Yep,
I think that's one of the
yes, sir.
that's one of the highlights, kind of developmental issues. Just as a culture we have right now is that there's like one square of sidewalk with an ADA little bump plate on it into literally nothingness.
Right.
And I don't know, we did the community a disservice by not just installing a sidewalk, but we wasted money putting that there. So,
All right, one more
Yeah.
page, guys. Stay with me, I know it's getting late. Other mobility recommendations, these are relatively benign. Electric vehicle infrastructure, encouraging location of EV charging stations at specific locations around the city. Protect and leverage the airport. There was increase opportunities to, what am I trying to say? Through the activities at the airport, make that more of a feature of the city, monitor the possibility of Amtrak coming through the existing rail lines through our downtown, so that's something we'll continue to monitor. And then looking through federal aid, highway, and bicycle pedestrian funds for infrastructure improvements. And then the last page of the mobility section is page 76, North Jackson Street Scrape Plan Implementation, which is in this plan, and actually we're using American Rescue Plan monies now to start that project, hopefully in the next few months, so at least the plan for it. So that completes the mobility section. Gentlemen, I think we made a lot of headway. Today, there was lots of good discussion. I will make the edits, and I will make do the research tomorrow morning when I get into work. I get to work at 7. I've got a DAC meeting at 8. And then right after that, I will do the required research and email it to you in anticipation of tomorrow night's meeting. The research being the range of uses for the mixed-use projects, for the traditional neighborhood new, and then there was something else I can't quite remember at this time, but I was going to get back to you too.
hey, Mary, is there any other use for this room between now and when we'll be in it?
Between now and when?
And when we'll be in
Tomorrow
it?
night.
Tomorrow night?
Perhaps.
Okay, I was just wondering, if we just left our stuff here, would
No,
that
no,
be-
no, we have to clean it up.
Okay.
Sorry.
Who uses this during?
A lot of
I see it's
people.
always lowered.
Do
Put a little note on it.
motion, any motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
All in favor?
Yeah, yes.
Can we get some a digital copy of
All in
this
favor? Aye.
tomorrow?
Yes. Oh, sorry, what was that, sir? Andy, what did you ask?
I was just asking if you were going to send a digital copy of it.
Yeah, I can say, I'll email it to you.
Yeah, let's, I know the court, I know that the local